If you break the rule, you get this punishment. Why is there so many? It's not even that there's so many gray areas or a gray area. From my understanding, the whole thing is a gray area. Every single case is taken on a case-by-case basis.
If Sentinels can't perform well on this patch, they're a tier 2 team.
Dude, sick even,
like
sick
there's
said.
Clip that, send it to everyone. I want to get flamed by Sentinels players. If Sentinels can't succeed on this patch, they're a tier 2 team.
Another week, ladies and gentlemen, in Valorant has passed us by, and so we must recap all the do's and don'ts, of course, the how, what, who, when, and why of Valorant around the world this week. Welcome back, everybody, to Valoranting. I'm Mitch Leslie, joined by MitchMan, and this week bringing on Anderzz, of course. Vansili, I believe, is in Vietnam, visiting family over there. So, Anderzz, great to have you on board with us, mate. I don't think we actually got to talk to you since this announcement, of course, of your coaching position. So, obviously, you know, big moves for you, man. Tell us what's been going on the last few weeks for you on the professional side.
Yeah, so in my neck of the woods, I've now been announced and have been coaching Version X, V1's Game Changers roster. It's been going super well. I think that the team's making impressive strides, and we've got some things in the works that will mix up things even more so and surprise a lot of people, I imagine. I think that we're putting ourselves in a position to make a lot of waves. So look forward to that, I suppose.
Absolutely. Again, obviously, it's a huge opportunity for you to really shape another roster. We've seen you have great success in the past, so that's all the nice things I'm going to say about you today. So
okay, perfect.
I thought I'd get them out
Quota
of the way
met.
quickly. Yeah. Mitch, what's going on? You've had a little bit of I guess, quieter schedule now, of course, with like VCT EMEA being a little truncated. So what's going on in your world, or rather your part of the world?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot less games going on. Had our week break, then we come back. Even then, no Friday games. Saturday we had 2. Sunday just the 1 BO3. So things have been really quiet here in EMEA. I guess all of us just holding our breath to see what the next 2 weeks are going to hold, how we're going to ultimately close out the group stage of the system, because there's a lot of questions still to be answered here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Obviously, teams, players, orgs alike affected by the ongoing conflict, in Eastern Europe there. So, we still managed to get some EMEA games. We are going to talk about them later on, as well as a little bit of an interesting snafu, I think, that we got ourselves into on the rules side of things. But anyway, today, broadly, we're going to start off and talk about VCT NA, because we did obviously have our games this week, including our match of the week featuring Version 1 and OpTic. Listen, I mean, really fascinating match to watch. I'd say the teams on their strong maps look very, very good, but outside of that, not great. So plenty to dig into there on the analytical side. And we will talk about, VCT EMEA. Had a few games, including a match of the week, a really big matchup that may not have gone the way that many people would have expected. And then I want to dig into what happened with G2, because there's again, we're talking about G2, but again, there was an inconsistency in sort of the applications of the rules in terms of some things you can and cannot do in game. So we need to go over that. There's going to be a long timeline to that. There are going to be culpable parties. They will be addressed. It may or may not be a bloodbath, so stick around for that. But let's start off talking about VCT North America. And of course, to help us cover those games, of course, member of the VCT broadcast team. Coming onto the show once more, everybody, welcome back, Rivington the Third. Thanks for joining us today, man.
Hey, friends, what's going on? I'm happy to be here.
Oh, chilling. I mean, look, we looked at the schedule, I think, last week for NA and VCT. We saw some really crucial matchups here. Let's bring up the results, because there are a ton of games here. But going into this week, we see Riot and Sentinels. We know Riot are, up and down at times, pretty inconsistent. We know the guard were looking fairly strong. Cloud9, you could say the same. The NRG Knights game might have been up in the air for a few people, and the XSET 100 Thieves one was like a chance to take the temperature for 100 Thieves, because, I mean, with the changes they made.
That was a bum check.
I mean, I'm interested to get some of your deeper thoughts on this one, because obviously for 100 Thieves, it might have been their last chance to have a shot at, getting anywhere within the vicinity of playoffs. And obviously, judging by this
0-4 now.
Yeah, I mean, not where they want to be, but unsurprising considering sort of how they've had to mix things up. And then Version 1 versus OpTic, which everyone expected to be a really sick match. And we got some great footage of just a couple of the things that stood out to us there. But where's Rivington? Yeah, thank you. Jesus Christ. Shortest guest segment that we've ever fucking had on the show. So obviously, Anderzz Rivington, let's dive in and talk about this NRG versus Knights, because high level, I want to get your thoughts on maybe what your expectations were for a matchup like this, where NRG, with the addition of Hazed, looking like they've got that veterancy, that shot calling potential, but Knights have just been on a tear, like just exploding out of the tier 2 region, now making a name for themselves.
They have been. I actually like draw attention to the young IGLs that are starting to come into the league, like Frosty, and we've seen this kid pop off too. Bam, on your screen. Absolute stellar player, as well as the IGL for the team. You have players like Scuba on Knights, who for some reason the controllers in NA right now are literally popping off. You have Valen, you have Vanity, you have Scuba. All of these guys just continue to have ridiculous rounds, ridiculous ADR, ACS per game. And it really helps Knights. The package starts to come with thanks to having clutch rounds. You have Ban that we haven't even mentioned yet. And coming into this, I remember doing an interview and I was like, I was hyped on energy. Sam was controlling teams. More than one player was required to really defend him. If he was pushing you, you wondered how to take him on. And we haven't seen any of that from energy. And Knights has been able to squeak through very nicely. Now they're in a very scary position because they have to look both above them and below them. Everybody in the standings is playing the team next to them. So OpTic is their game. They're looking above them. That's tough. Below them, if energy can't beat Rise, then they're likely to tie with Rise, and you have to figure out what the round differential is there. So Knights is in there. It's surprising to see. They're kind of squeaking in like Luminosity, and they weren't much of a storyline, right? But they can definitely be thwarted here coming out still. And I feel like they've done the work to get themselves in. They may struggle beyond this if they do make it, but I think the team would require that type of practice to get better. We've seen how far they've come, and these tier 2 like tournament teams are doing really well from this open qualifier.
The Mickey Meow teams,
the Mickey Mouse teams. They get their season passes. But yeah, the fact that every team is playing, like, there's a Reddit thread about it, that the storylines are like, way to write that, John Riot, is that Guard versus Cloud9, XSET, Luminosity, like all these matches feel like they're going to impact it, and they very much will. It's interesting to see that race in B, though.
Yeah, I think that as far as this matchup goes, it's really cool to see sort of Knights come into their own. Obviously, they've been grinding on the tier 2 circuit for what feels like forever. Mostly young players coming in and sort of dueling young bloods versus a lot more of sort of a veteranship in the form of NRG. But it feels like it's a story of a young team that is rapidly innovating and adapting. In no small part, they brought on a new analyst in Slow just recently, and I feel like from sort of a highly analytical person on the outside looking in, his impact is very clearly felt when I watch their games. And when you look at NRG on the other side, it feels like they're almost fatigued. Like their
Yeah.
strength of schedule in the first couple of weeks beat them into the ground. And there's sort of two ways that you can bounce back from that. You can sort of take those losses in stride and innovate super, super quickly, or just assume that your playbook that got beat will hold stronger against weaker teams. It felt like they did the latter, and it just didn't work.
Here on Bind, NRG come out with Brimstone Sage here, plus the Sky. So really different compositions between these two. What's your take on sort of how these ended up playing out?
I mean, it's quite interesting. You've got like the more standard Fnatic-esque comp from Knights, and then you've got the we're just going to pilfer a composition from Acend approach from NRG, which I mean, we'll talk about that later. But I mean, Ascend's bind has been a force of nature for what feels like the last couple of months at this point. So for a team to bring that in with a bunch of veteran players, super highly fundamentaled, and be able to convert on that, not particularly surprising. I think the one standout for me was the fact that they're making that sort of composition work with some very major like team architecture differences. One of the reasons I think it works so well for Acend is that you have CNED on the Sage, and so you have a supporting character that's now opping while still having your primary duelist. Not many teams can emulate that, NRG included, but they still manage to convert with it, which I find very interesting.
Yeah. Obviously, to see how teams are responding in lieu of sort of these, even preparing for Astra to be different. I mean, we're not on the newest patch here, so the Astra nerfs obviously are still to be felt. The impact of those are anyway. Haven was look, a decent start for NRG, but they struggled, I think, defensively here as Knights really pressured them in that first half. NRG able to get their feet a little bit more, but I mean, the second half was a real blowout here. NRG don't win any rounds in that second half. Knights win the pistol, and they really get off to the races here. A great map for Barnes specifically. His Jett, absolutely a nuisance.
I like the way that Anders put it, was fatigued. I feel like that's a perfect thing for energy here, is that they, and especially this late in the tournament, you're not going to be bringing new things in, as you said before, and it's rinse and repeat for what you have. And teams have already figured that out. The teams that are hungry, they're coming in fresh. I mean, you did just kind of, not, kind of, sorry, you not did just add Hayes. He's been there for a bit, but
Yeah.
looking at that, it's like you still have time to formulate a plan. Know that you can work off Som more. You always see that Tex has a really nice impact on that KO, and we didn't see as much of that this time around. So I don't think the team overall was feeling it. You're already so far down in the tournament, and you didn't see the results that were expected from everybody. You're playing in that kind of slump. So I think that's where they're shooting from right now, and it becomes a lot harder to hit your targets. And Knight's taking advantage of that completely. May still get scrounged, like I said, from the teams below them, but they have been fighting for it, and we see the practice that they've put in.
Yeah, 2-2. I mean, OpTic Gaming a bloody 2-2 in this group right
Yeah.
now. That was kind of, pointed out. I guess NRG get to take on Rise next week, but, if we have a chance here to sort of characterize their campaign through VCT NA so far, it feels like NRG have, been a little bit snowed under by the strength of their schedule and their opposition, I guess, as well. Seems like they're really struggling to stand tall in this kind of group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that last map is the one that highlighted it the most for me, where it's like they didn't do anything that I haven't seen 30 times in the past 2 weeks. So
Mhm.
that's a concerning place for them to be as a team that doesn't necessarily have the pure firepower to contend with a lot of these super, super hungry young cracked rosters. I mean, look at the gap between Ban and Som on that last map, and it becomes pretty readily apparent that NRG is going to need some sort of strategic differentiation in order to close the gap, and it just wasn't there.
Yeah, a lot of times I've said this in League of Legends too, but I feel like NA teams have this tendency, and just comparing it to Europe and Champions League soccer and MLS and NA, is that NA always has this star player they want to play around, and you take your percentages away from winning the round when you're like star player go. We'll give you a drone or something. Whereas in Champions League, you have this team of brutes that are always going to play around each other or trade a little bit more, and they still have a star player, but you look at your Scream, your Navera, right? Your Yampy, all on one team. You're like, holy shit, how do we beat all of those guys? Oh, maybe if we just kill tens, we'll be good, right? Something like that. And it's this formulation, or it's a formula where we find can Som go? Can Som kill? Well, not this game. It's not going to work. And that style of striker go, pass the ball to him only, isn't really flying for NA anymore. And I think it needs to change. I think it needs to become more robust. We are seeing teams like the Guard bring everybody onto the table for what needs to happen, being there hip and hip on trades, continually taking sites with utility and trading off of that util. It's just, I feel like the teams that look for that one opper now, you're just playing your cards to the lower percentage, add more favorability into that and bring everybody along. I think that would help any teams out quite a bit. And I think we see the teams that are, bringing everybody into the fold for a strategy and not leaving them back to do something are the ones that we're seeing win.
Shifting gear a little bit here, I have really struggled to put my finger on Rise this season in VCT NA. I really don't know. Obviously, the feel from this team is that they're kind of struggling, right? I think was it Derek who tweeted the other week, there's only so many times I can just fucking say, all good or something, to that effect. So I mean, and they're going to this week 1 and 2. So, not trying to be funny, doing pretty well considering that this group is really, really fucking nasty. They're going up against Sentinels, who've also shown their own degree of shakiness. Rise have really pushed Sentinels to the limit in the past. What are we dealing with here with this Rise team? As obviously they start off on Haven against this Sentinels squad, high level coming into this week. What to what degree are Rise a known quantity for us?
I kind of actually, Anders, I want to say, as you discuss this, if that's cool, like, did you expect Rise to do this bad?
No, so like my whole
Okay, me
thing
neither.
is that coming into this main event, I was expecting Rise to be a pretty major contender. Like coming off the heels of the end of last year, they were showing that they were a force to be reckoned with at a level that no
Yeah,
one else really expected. And I was like, oh sweet, we get to see more of that coming into this year. They're one of the teams that has some of the most like inbuilt prior CS fundamentals. So like super strong team at its core. They just need to be able to stick with the meta, and we'll probably see great things from them. Doesn't materialize at all. And I'm not sure what's going wrong with them for that to be the case. It doesn't seem like they're playing off meta or that they're particularly behind where that would be the cause. They've
agreed.
got the firepower to convert, so I'm not sure exactly why the pieces aren't coming together for them. It's really hard to put your finger on.
Seeing them against is the Sentinels game here, which they still fared decently well on, especially on their attack. You always have Derek and Superman who have been not Superman, sorry, I should say Derek and Neptune kind of even fragged here, have been fragging out for this squad, doing really well. Superman, we've seen a few times saying he hasn't been able to do that well. But their strats, the way they run it, I think Ascent versus Knights was perfect on that. The way they cooperated in running mid, running that variation strat with a drone, then backing up towards cat in 2 or 3 round separation, hold Knights the rug right out from under them. But they're just not hitting their shots. Rise continues to get in these situations where they get to a post plant, and it's like everybody's back is still turned as their opponents are taking the site. And Knight's also doing a fantastic job of working Ziff Sage, which really shut Rise down. And I think Rise fell into a hole throughout most of the group stage here of being stopped by teams and not having a second iteration to the strat for that round, unless it was completely at another site or that they had wasted too much on their first foray into the site and they were just plagued by it. And then maybe a few star rounds here and there, but it wouldn't be enough to carry them through. And you're just like, you were almost given that rise you were expecting, but they just fell short every time. And as Andrew said, I agree that I don't think they should have done that poorly. And it's unfortunate. I think at the end of the day, a lot of their shots didn't hit, and it made the rest of their play sloppy.
So Sentinels are still adamant that they don't want to take Raze onto Fracture. They want to play the Jett, which is no surprise. It's tens here. It works out for them here on this particular map, although tens is maybe not necessarily flying particularly high. Fracture ends up being pretty close, Anders.
I mean, did it work out for them? Look at how close this scoreline is versus a team that on paper they should just absolutely steamroll. Like, I feel like this is a case of Sentinels probably has a little bit of PTSD from the last couple of times they've had tens on Raze and it going abysmally. But like,
No.
even so, like if you need proof that your baseline strategy is suboptimal, you've got tens, one of the hottest individually mechanically skilled players in the region, going negative FKFD in an even scoreline.
Yeah.
Like there's just no universe where that is the correct pickup here.
And he was
Like,
throwing himself into spike sites too.
yeah, I won't belabor it anymore, but like I've been a Raze salesman on this map since before it was playable. So I've said my
100%.
piece more than once.
I'll buy stock in that. If you're gonna ask me whether I want to smoke screen something running in or clear the very tiny precise spots that I can in tower or back of A, give me the nade every single time. Combine it with a breach and nobody can be safe in the site. Like to retake like that again, it's one of those things. Like I said before, you're looking for the striker to make a play. You're taking away percentage, like availability to win the round by saying, no, we don't need the nade, we don't need the blast, we don't
is
need
there like
the
a
room of find.
justification for
We're
this?
just going to go for Jett and go for the high profile. They don't want it to be a content play, but it's the tougher play.
The justification is that they literally don't have the team, like they don't have the player architecture to support the correct composition.
Because
This
none of
is
Sick can play Raze.
I mean, they know best.
this is going to be something that it's going to be a theme on a couple of these other matchups. I'm going to bring it up. Wait for it. Is that I think one of NA's most systemic issues is that the way that they've architected their rosters, they cannot support optimal team compositions on a regular basis. And it's because of this thing that Riv is talking about where you have this star striker syndrome where every team has this guy that they want to make work no matter what. That player has a certain level of inflexibility to them. It shatters their roster's ability to adapt, and it causes them massive problems.
Okay. All right. So bind, obviously, Sentinels on bind. Pretty confident on this particular map. I think Superman got shut down pretty hard. Playing the Viper on this particular map. Nice scoreboard, Stephen, but 0-7. So getting involved in 0-7 first kill, first test. So getting involved in a fair few of those early engagements and not winning out any of them. A nightmare map for him. How much does that factor, I guess, here? Is Riot still able to put 8 rounds on the board despite having a player that's virtually invisible? I mean, KAST percentage is 29, so really struggling to have an impact.
It comes down to that. It looks good, but shots don't hit, right? As if one of those pieces is super falling apart, it makes the rest of the team look chaotic when you're trying to come in and you don't have that utility the other team has.
And I mean, they're both running the sort of composition that's going to boil down strictly to aim. Like there isn't a ton of depth to the way that these compositions can play
Great
out
point.
mid rounds.
Sure.
They're just running and shooting at each other. And if one team if one team hits more shots than the other, they're probably going to win. And when you have a player that's functionally invisible, probably going to lose in that situation.
I mean, the Viper's involved. I mean, I think Superman was involved in as many first kill, first death scenarios as Shanks was on the Jett. Now, Shanks was 1-6, so he didn't do much better either. But why is in what world do you have your Viper getting being first to the fight in so many occasions? Like, do you not want to try and lurk a little bit, stay alive for the mid to later round? Like, why is this such an issue?
I mean, I would have to go back and watch the VOD super thoroughly, but my immediate thought process would be that they're playing a fairly standard Viper entrenchment comp setup on defense, where Viper's sort of solo anchoring hookah. They expect the enemy team to have to allocate a ton of utility to flush that Viper out. And the really important part of that entire setup is that the Viper still has to be fairly elastic in the way that they defend. When all of that util dump starts coming through, give up the space. You've sort of gotten your value. Some teams will go into those setups and not go into that secondary elastic phase where the Viper will entrench. A bunch of util will come in, and then the Viper will be like, no, I can still hold this. And then they'll just get absolutely boomed because there's 3 people rushing it or whatever.
Yeah.
Or none.
Whenever I see Vipers with really negative FKFDs, what it generally signals to me is, on default, that Viper was probably defending hookah and overstayed repeatedly. Would be my, that happens all the time. Numerous teams, numerous regions. Wouldn't shock me at all if that was the case here.
Yeah. Surprised that we're not seeing any of that. I know OpTic like to play the chamber on this map, and defensively, they'll sit Yay and hookah or something. He can always rendezvous back to the side, or he can even rendezvous to short A, I think is one of the setups there. Neither of these teams seem to have been wanting to sort of pick that up. But look, overall, not a great series for I think either team, right? I think Sentinels, you expect more from them on a map like Fracture, and maybe that inflexibility you guys highlighted, it holds them back a little bit, and Rise continue to just really crumble at key moments, right? I think that it's a tough one for Superman, but he's not the only player that gets 3 kills in a map. So
That's true.
On that note, let's talk about Luminosity vs Cloud9 Blue. What you guys reckon about this one? Oh my goodness! Oh, look, obviously on paper, a really difficult matchup for Luminosity, and they're similarly hard to pin down. They're 2-2, right? They're coming to this week 2-1.
They flew under the radar.
Yeah, they beat EG and 100 Thieves, right? So probably the opposition they're going to face. Coming up against Cloud9 Blue, and it's a fucking reckoning straight out of the gates. Holy smokes. 1 round on defense, 1 for Luminosity. It's a bloodbath.
Well, they get ring around from the guard, right? They go 2-0-2.
Yeah.
And then they have EG and 100 Thieves. Whether or not that helped them in this group, I mean, they still had to beat EG 100 Thieves. But they put themselves in this position now where they lost to Cloud9. They're basically in, right? Oh, look at this again. Yeah, because of the 04s.
Yes.
So this is amazing for them. They now get to not try things versus Cloud9, but we've seen them have great Haven play. I think they could play Haven against Cloud9 and try to get that map in the mix, because C9 usually plays that really well. Vanity's amazing. I'm sorry. Yeah, Vanity's amazing at just making that a 2-site map, and then you're forced to really work around being pinched by somebody somewhere or information that they've already gained. So I think this game more so can help them out. It'd be a huge boon to win just for the look and to see what Luminosity has. But yeah, I think Cloud9 isn't pulling any punches here. They're gonna
I
go
mean,
real hard again.
we have to address the elephant in the room, right? It's a Jett that gets absolutely fucking smoked. I think B-Dog just got pretty well
Yeah,
shut down. I
yeah,
think,
they
by-
built them up for the show too.
yeah, I mean, B-Dog got absolutely trounced here.
my
And again,
God.
and Leaf is just right. Yeah, Leaf is running away with this. Tough for Mata and B-Dog to find
Ugh.
meaningful ways into the map here. Obviously, both teams still sort of going with the Sky. No KO here for either of these guys on Haven. So a bit more of a, we'll call it a traditional setup. I mean, the breach is obviously there from Zeta. So nice to see that incorporate a little bit more here. No Sova for Cloud9. Now, is this something to sort of, is this something to expect going forward? How common is this even? Because
This is some EU throwback shit right,
Right,
here.
right.
Because there was a period of time, it was probably like a good 3-4 months, where EU was experimenting with running solo Sky as like their info initiator, and I mean we saw that on Bind, where it ended up sticking around pretty considerably for a
Right.
sustained
Mhm.
period. It showed up on Haven a little bit. I think some teams experimented with it briefly on Ascent. I think TL was among the teams to do that, and like they immediately reverted course for hopefully readily apparent reasons. But it's something that we've seen before and something that has legs to it. It's not just like completely off your rocker, you don't know what you're doing type compositional
Mhm.
decisions, but it is something that has never really been proven in North America as a region, and so it does give them a bit of a leg up, I think, just off of shock factor.
I
Right.
do think as well, speaking of it, EU used to do it though. That was back when Sky was much more reliable as a duelist as well, right? Like she was
As
so
a duelist, yikes.
And-
You could get a gun up.
The
genuinely,
Yeah.
phrasing tells it
is-
all, honestly.
It is messed up, but it was the sort of situation where the easiest solution on every map to how do we get Sky into this comp because she's unbelievable was like, let's just put her in instead of the Sova. It's like a 1-to-1 swap, more or less. We lose a little bit of that info, but now we've got a dude who can just run out and take these fights again and again and again. So it was really worthwhile back then. Now you definitely don't get that same level of advantage, but I'm not against it. Yeah, I think it can work for a team, especially in just, like you said, shock factor, putting the other team on the back foot.
So Bind in this series ends up being a much closer affair. So Luminosity, credit to them, able to dust themselves up after getting dragged through it on map number 1 here. It's a 7-5 half for Cloud9, and a series that ends up in overtime here. We talked about Cloud9 a bunch in this map. There's sort of, the tendency to try and create trap plays. Also, both teams have the chamber here. So they're able to have that available to them on defense. But it is Cloud9 that eventually sort of squeeze this one out here. Nice to see, though, a map like this from Luminosity, and sort of remind us why they are sort of 2-2 after this match.
Oh, would you look at that? Another team whose star duelist has inflexibility and it makes his team really uncomfortable and underperform on a map that they should be smacking their opponents on. Weird. It's almost like when you put Leaf on something that isn't called Jett, the team suddenly does way worse than you would expect them in any other scenario.
Yeah, what do you make of that? Because individually, Leaf obviously has a good map on the Viper. But how does it change the way that Cloud9 have to play here?
So it's like an interesting case study in opportunity cost. I'm not going to say that Leaf is a bad player here because he's forced onto the Viper. What I am going to say is that when you're a star duelist, you should be able to be a star duelist agnostic of map. The fact that they're
Mhm.
putting Zeppa onto the Raze here, and I think this is no flame to Zeppa. I think he is point blank probably the best flash initiator in North America right now. He is not a good enough Raze.
Right.
Full stop. So the fact that Leaf is forcing him onto a role where he just isn't at the level that I think he would need to be for him to be the main duelist on a map for what is aspiring to be the best team in North America, like I put that more on Leaf than anyone else in that roster. He should be able to play Raze here.
And that situation becomes a little bit harder too, because you're seeing these comps without flashes. So now you're putting the weight on someone's shoulders that says, yeah, you might have a drone, but you're not going to have like the upper hand on a shot. They're going to hear you. They're going to see you. They're not going to be disoriented. And they probably won't care about the drone if they hear you blast packing it. So you're asking for a lot from these players once again, with even less of that utility than probably Leaf would have on a different map with a flash coming up behind him, right? So yeah, the struggle you put everyone in is sometimes it works, and these players should be able to perform like that. But when you keep adding those things on where somebody else needs to perform, when you don't have the flashes, it becomes much more of a technical duelist initiation. Everyone go forward. Well, how close can we be to our duelist to trade that frag to be there as they're hopping over things, because the other team's not as disoriented as if they were flashed, if they were more smoked off for that control.
Um, And I think obviously Mitch here is the one that actually picks up the chamber, which has worked fine for
Good job, Mitch.
R9 in the past, though. But I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, what if there's some, yeah, what if there's some kind of, yeah, I'm just interested to see that, you know, like your star duels pick up the Viper on this map. I guess actually on the face of it, it looks like a flexibility. It looks like it demonstrates flexibility until you maybe realize that, hold on, this team's not able to put their star duelist on the raise
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
sort of transition. You know?
it's like, oh, he's flexible because he's on a different role. But then you think about it, it's like, but wait, what is his role supposed to be, and why isn't he playing it? Like, huh?
They didn't ask if they
Yeah.
should, just because they could.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's fascinating. A little tidbit about Cloud9 to keep an eye on going forward, especially with the matchup they got this week. You know, if that's a weakness of theirs, it's going to get exposed by a team like Version 1. Speaking about exposed weaknesses, I mean, 100 Thieves roll over and you show their soft underbelly, because obviously they've just made gigantic changes midway through VCT NA for reasons, and that's all we know really. But people thought Nadeshot was really genuine because he just didn't get a professional camera and put lighting behind him, even though he said just as much as Jack Etienne did in his announcement about the League of Legends coaching change. Doesn't matter. The fact is, he made it look genuine because he just sat in front of his camera phone, because Nadeshot knows how to speak to people. Everyone was like, oh, yes, this is way more believable than the LS situation. 100 Thieves, anyway, and aside, 100 Thieves, obviously, JC Starning and Bang come into the lineup here. Two players that are known quantities elsewhere, right? But 100 Thieves need something. They need some source here to have any chance of sort of playoffs. Otherwise, this team's going for a long holiday. And they're up against XSET, who are one of the most frightening teams in the region that Cryo sells second tour de force. Looking very scary. XSET, you know, get up to a good start here. They win the pistol on the attacking side. JC Starney's able to have some moments here in the first map, but 100 Thieves do stumble in that second half.
A lot of stumbling. I feel like you're still hoping for Asuna to carry, and they were going to switch a few of the roles around, but we see more of the same thing with just the players picking up where they can. I think the biggest thing was Ethan calling, which wasn't too bad, actually, because he's been kind of getting into that role, even with Nitro on the squad. He was there. Even with Eccles for the day, he was there.
Yeah.
And I just think overall, they weren't set up for success. You know, we can get into more of it. We're just talking about that game.
Sure.
Just overall, you're not vibing, you're not feeling it. You're hoping everybody plays well. When you see them not play well, you know, you're not reassured by their previous play or past tournament when everybody was on LAN. So the feeling, you know, trying to get that stride with a new team like that, especially when you did not experience any honeymoon phase, is really hard mid-stride.
Yeah,
yeah.
The way I sort of see it is 100 Thieves had no business doing even as well as they did here.
Yeah.
Like I cut them a significant amount of slack.
Yeah.
And I think that this was honestly an overperformance from what I would have expected.
Sure. I mean, think map 2 is a good example of that, right? I think Fracture is where JC Starney gets to display a lot of their flexibility, right? As a player who was like a Sentinel player, then a smoker.
You look good.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like this guy now, obviously Nate enjoying there. Good on him.
Oh,
he's absolutely.
Oh,
no. I mean,
he's going to make more roster changes.
What does he have? Chicken nuggies there? He doesn't even want his nuggies.
I mean, guys, it's just content. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus Christ, people can't. It's so funny, people's inability to see through these more charismatic content creators and what they do. But fuck me. I mean, if you're Nadeshot, like, what are you really expecting? You know, you've been a player yourself. I'm sure you've been on teams where, like, you've been put in compromising circumstances. Like, you're not expecting, anything huge here. But yeah, like I was saying, JC Starney, obviously the kind of player who, you know, at one point was a Sentinel player, a smoker. He even you know, teased us with a bit of Jett play at one point along his career. On Fracture, both these teams are happy to put their star duelists on race. So that first box, Anderzz, is ticked. All right, we get to the starters line at least with everything intact here. Talk to us about this, because it's a 100 Thieves map. They have a fantastic defense here. XSET unable to break in at all.
It looked like to me that XSET has been playing this fracture might as well be a copy pasta from Champions. Like nothing that we saw at Champions had changed to the way that XSET was playing this map.
Yeah.
And I think that is ultimately their issue, and sort of XSET's issue on a broader level is they feel super stale. The reason that I sort of fell in love with their team and had a lot of confidence in them historically was they were one of the best innovative rosters in NA, and that seems to have evaporated over the last couple of weeks.
Right.
And I mean, I think that 100 Thieves, like, they don't have a strong foundation to go off of. Obviously, the team was just completely upended. They're playing very flowy. They're playing very fundamentals focused. Ethan's probably mid-rounding off of completely the top of his head and just like very aberrant things. And
I smell something. Go A.
Yeah. Well, honestly, not far off. So if you sort of contrast those two, where it's like ultra stale versus not enough foundation to be stale, even remotely,
Oh, no.
like,
Jeez.
I know which one of those I would favor personally.
Sure. And a bit unpredictable as well. It looks like Zekken had real issues making sort of any sort of penetration towards these sites, right, in the early round. Asuna, conversely, is having a fine time.
Yeah.
Right? He's one of those players who's able to play the Jett and the Rays right now. He's actually feeling pretty comfortable. One of the few elements of this team that isn't on very, very sort of shaky ground. There's a lot of criticisms to a bunch of individuals on this sort of roster, but the fact of the matter is that foundation, right, that lack thereof, it's something that will get exposed with time. Like there might be a map here, a map there, right, but in the long haul, lack of solid ground to stand on eventually comes to rear its ugly head. And what better map for that to occur on than the 100 Thieves previous permaban Split?
Whenever I see Split, I always think of the time when Hiko brought out Rays. What was that, like Pop Flash or whatever it was called in First Strike? One of those. He's like, I woke up this morning and I wanted to play Rays, and then they friggin' won.
Yeah.
And then it seems like they forgot how to do that. But now coming into this, again, they switch it up. Like Ethan goes on the Chamber. Things are looking all right. We know Hiko plays the Viper. I figured when they said Hiko might be playing more of a Sentinel role, it wouldn't be playing what he already played, basically. Actually going to more of a Sentinel and a Lurk, because the brains he could bring to kind of like what Steel did might even be awesome. And then he gets to be the last one in the site every time. It just would have worked out. But yeah, they fall apart. If they're not going to have the first, they're not going to have, like, they have the mental in some of the veteran status to play a best of 3. But as a team, that takes a lot more coordination.
What do you guys think about how Bang is working out? Obviously,
I feel like Bang's a really smart player.
cut him like a lot of slack, right? Because he has picked up. He's playing Breach on this map for 100 Thieves, so not able to find much success, unfortunately, here. Getting involved in like a ton of rounds though, and he actually trades out a ton. So even though we're sort of giving up those deaths here, not obviously he and Hiko. I mean, so we know that Hiko's first kill, first death is usually 000 for obvious reasons. But look, 100 Thieves is on the attack. Looked like they did not really have a solid idea of how to put pressure on XSET and find weaker sides. They're also I think we sort of saw it the way the entry was a little uncomfortable here. Arsenal is not able to cause problems, in those early rounds to remotely the same degree. I feel
it's everything they have right there is peek with a smoke or peek with a breach flash.
I was gonna say they have zero info. Like they don't have a sky, they don't have a Cypher camera, they don't have a Killjoy turret to contact, they don't have a soap, literally nothing. So how do you get space with that comp? You literally just face check stuff, and that's
You look back at the Fracture game too, for when 100 Thieves was able to take it. They shut Cryo down that game. And Cryo is usually slapping people around. And again, he does that on Split. One of the reasons that they come back at 19-7 from him on top. So I think 100 Thieves almost had like a saving grace on that one, where Cryo was whiffing a few shots and taking a few to the dome. And then he comes back online for game 3, and it looks like XSET all over again.
And I feel like, it's almost the same issue as we saw from this team on Fracture, where like there's no info gathering tools here. So like maybe people have been critical about the IGLing on this team, because like whenever you see a team that's not very good on attack rounds or loses a bunch of attack rounds, just gets shut out, like people tend to criticize the IGLs here. But this fucking composition doesn't have the tools for the IGL to gather information upon which to make informed decisions, right? It's just like
Yeah.
you know, try and swing, try and trade. You know, like wide swing out on towards A long and try and create an opportunity there. Like it feels like it was a very I hate using this term, but it felt really like a really puggy style from 100 Thieves. Like they're
It
just
is.
trying to.
It's almost reactive from both of them. It's like we'll hold this angle and see if they'll peek through our smoke first, or when the smoke
Yeah.
drops, if they'll
I mean,
peek.
fuck me.
Like
At least
you're waiting for the
BCJ's
mistake.
BCJ at least is on the sky. So like
Yeah.
you know, there's at least some mechanism from which XSET can like divine how many if there's like a stack on the side, or like you know how held like heaven is, or if they can make a push into A if there's no one sort of hiding around the corner. Like I mean, it looks
One
like
of
it
the
does a whole lot.
One
for
of
it.
the things, obviously, is it's an agent in the composition, getting used to that, getting used to everything. But I feel like Sky, especially on that, I've thought about this for Fracture before. Is there's obviously timings and distances that she can travel with her utility, and unless you know where you're putting that, where it's going, you're wasting time, you're wasting vision, and you don't actually know what the hell that Sky Flash saw unless you maybe throw it in and dip it under, say, B platform to the right towards Jenny, then you know you flash back for arcade and over towards right side, right? So if somebody doesn't know that, you're throwing a flash into sight, who the hell did you flash? Sky's useless to you. So I actually think it takes a pretty refined Sky on Fracture to be good, to know those distances, those timings, how far Trailblazer can go, and where you're safe enough to get a good return on investment for those utility.
Mm. Yeah, the approach to those sites is is fairly long.
There's so many
You can-
corners.
sometimes you can come away with just no fucking info, even after using the Trailblazer for the full length. All right, let's move on then and talk about a bit of a mismatch here that we saw in Group A. The Guard up against Evil Geniuses here, an EG team that you know has been fine. I think that people have been much more impressed with them now, and you know with obviously the changes they've made, like Dre joining up with this team and Boostio looking really good in this role. Georgimo also able to have impact. The Guard are looking better than ever. I think, which is safe to say here. Let's talk about Haven. These guys have identical compositions here. Obviously, both teams making use of the Sova and the Sky. So a lot of info gathering, of course, on a 3-site map sort of makes this sense. But obviously, you see here the Guard end up clinching it out here pretty comfortably.
I mean, the Guard is just legitimately making a case for themselves as like contestants for the top team in NA. Like, do I think that they're going to ultimately clinch that
Oh.
spot? Probably not. Are they making the argument? Yeah. I mean, they're definitely putting it up. And it's interesting because, like, over the last week, you had sort of in the Twitter sphere a bunch of people talking about who they considered were like the most underrated players in NA. I low key think Saya, at least statistically so far in this VCT cycle, is just the best Jett in the region.
Okay.
And nobody's talking about it. So look at that FKFD ratio for me real quick. So let's just go through the FKFDs of top Jetts in the region. Ye is
Sure.
at 1.0, Tens is at 1.04, Leaf is at 1.1, Penny's 1.2, Ban from PK is at 1.7. So really, really impressive. Saya is at 2.1, and in this week in particular, he was at 3.7.
Okay.
Let that sink in. This guy's dropping 4 first kills almost to each first death.
Yeah.
And how is that even possible, man? Like, it's not like they have a weak strength of schedule. He's putting these numbers up against legitimate opponents, and people aren't talking about him like he's just some, like, crazy cracked Jett. He doesn't have the volume of first kills that some of the other Jetts do, but
His impact.
exactly. It's the impact of the kills that he's getting, the openings that he creates for his team, and he's just more selective about the first kills that he chases. He's not reckless.
Yeah.
He's not going to go even on them. He's going to take them when he knows he can convert them. And like, if I could have a Jett that was putting up that sort of FKFD numbers, like, I don't know how my team would ever lose. Like, that's just insane.
I did a write-up 2 weeks ago, and I said he has the potential to be one of the hottest Jetts on the scene, and he is quickly taking up that mantle, like you said, especially for NA. My heart wants to see like the Guard at International right now in this form, because you're right. I don't think they'll win. I think this will teeter. Like, we haven't even seen the loss and pickup of the Guard, right? We've seen them go down a map and they come back the next map like nothing ever happened. But where's that? Can they come back from a string of losses? This is like the most amazing honeymoon phase where they just keep island hopping and finding these gorgeous places to live. and nobody's really able to test them. And kudos to them. Like, they consistently bring that play to the table. It's not just one player. You see them all fragging. Trent is, again, like I said, for Frosty, these young players on the scene are absolutely disgusting. And somebody was saying that they were speaking with MCE, and he was like, "I hope this kid doesn't hack when he comes to the compound, right, to play." And he's just a golden god with the rest of the squad. Net's been there as one of the main trios, so this team has some ground. And Valen, like Scuba, another one of those controllers, it's just fragging. And like, where is the hole in their armor, right? And when a team finds it, the next question is, can every team exploit that? So, you're always so weary watching this team. You're like, holy shit, they're going to do it again. But when will it not go as well as it is? It's such an interesting story for this team that's just on the rise. It's so cool to see and what their ceiling will be.
Tight icebox map, though. I mean, you talked about Wizard volume for Sire player. He provides it here for sure.
Exactly.
And it takes the guard really waking up in the second half of that second half to sort of take this away. Otherwise, we could have had an overtime on our hands. I think Evil Geniuses start that second half really, really nicely. Can we speculate as to where that hole in the armor might be, though? Okay, using this map maybe as an example here. Obviously, it's icebox. Obviously, this is a pretty cut and dry kind of way to play the map. I guess the difference between these teams, I thought it was interesting that EG had the Jett, they had the Sage, and they had the Chamber. Whereas there was a Killjoy here for the guard instead. They opted to sort of bring a Sentinel in here. But why is this so close? I guess is my question, especially between, we're looking at top and bottom teams here essentially. Any thoughts maybe, Anderzz, on sort of why this was such a battle, especially with Sire player almost dropping fucking 30?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that the guards struggled with here is just overall pace changes. If we want to talk about like where I think the chink in their armor is going to end up being, I think it's when they're put in a position where they have to be a faster team. I think that Net is like probably one of the best side anchors currently playing. Like, super young player, phenomenal Sentinel, great game sense, knows when to anchor, knows when to play for retake, always good for two. Saya, phenomenal first kill opportunity selection, but in both of those situations, your players need time. You need time for Net to assess his situation on site and know when he needs to make the decisions he needs to make. In Saya's situation, you need to give him time so that he's finding these windows that are high conversion rate and he's not taking FK opportunities that are as close to a 50-50. When this next patch goes live, if the guard crumples, I imagine that's going to be the catalyst, because we're moving into a meta that's going to be way faster. You're going to lose a lot of entrenchment utility. You're going to lose your ability to slow down the game pace and give yourself the time to make those decisions. That's where I think the guard might suffer a little bit. And I think that part of that is what happened in this icebox, actually. I think that EG did a great job of sort of slowing them down on attack, and that's why you saw the guard's Sage dying consistently. It was, we've been slowed enough that when we go in and we try to get this plant down, Sage just dies every time.
Yeah, I
and
believe
so
that.
if you're putting them into a situation already where slowing their pace, even a marginal extent, is causing them to have close maps, when we move into a meta where like that is going to be almost the norm from other teams, how well do they handle it? It's going to be interesting.
I think that note about their play style is super accurate, because I think they're one of the best teams right now at imposing their play style, no matter what it be for that round, and the availability of their star power makes that so obtainable for them. So as soon as somebody starts to make the guard play reactive instead of proactive, it could definitely be the way they crumble.
I love this discussion about pace variation and controlling pace, because it's actually a big theme in our match of the week, baby. That's right. Version 1 go up against OpTic. And look, version 1 tabletoppers here, looking very, very strong. Hearing from FNS last week, he said, people are very complimentary the way we played against the Sentinels, but we felt like our game plan was riddled with mistakes and we're not particularly happy with it. So a chance to see if they're able to, tighten up a couple of those loose screws here. So, I mean, let's jump right in. Let's talk about Acend here, which ultimately, ends up being really one-sided. But I think there's quite a lot to this. So our match of the week, of course, we're going to break down a few of the plays here. So I'm going to tee it up here. So this is round 2, where we get an idea of OpTic controlling the pace of the round on defense here and really staking their claim towards mid.
I mean, OpTic's game on Acend was something else. It felt like every single time V1 tried to push for space, OpTic would immediately either deny that space with like a hero 2 for 1. I mean, we just saw one from, I think it was like Marv, immediately went up for 2. The number of times that happened where it's
So
like,
good.
all right, V1 goes for space, gets 2 for 1. And then they fall back, they sort of go into a default, they prod for more space, and they're just constantly at disadvantage. That felt like the entirety of V1's attacking side. They could not get space, and in the rare opportunity that they sort of got out of the bottlenecks that they wanted to, they were immediately answered by just some crazy anchor shenanigans from one of the OpTic players.
Round 6 here, we got to see a nasty little post plant setup here, orchestrated by FNS. As this is how OpTic just play around the side again. This is V1 trying to get space. How are they getting space? They're just walking into A main. Like, do they lack the mechanism to get it any other way?
I mean, they've got the KO utility on Zelsis, but it feels like OpTic was doing a great job of drawing out utility early.
Yep.
Like, I mean, the term that I use a lot of the time is elastic defense, where like you have sort of the front line and it stretches and rebounds as necessary. I think that OpTic's elastic defense on this map was unreal. Every single time V1 would push into space, they would hold it to the utter breaking point of that elasticity and then rebound. And like, I just don't know how you beat it. I went and watched it back because after it being such a dominating performance, I was trying to ask myself, like, how much of this was just build order loss? Being that, like, V1 just chose a play at the start of the round and OpTic happened to high roll into the perfect answer to it every time.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. It
The way
wasn't
the
build
wind
order
blows.
loss. OpTic was just dynamic enough that they were consistently stifling everything V1 tried to do. It was insane.
And it's usually we have to see a Sage for that kind of slow, for that kind of initiating a team to even try a second retake. But you can see there, just OpTic was like, okay, even during the plant post plant will make you waste more utility. Ye's up top, but will anybody peek? And then nobody peeks for 10 seconds, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And version 1's then caught looking at a different angle when they do all decide to be, those reads that they had, like Anderzz is saying, it just came up on top a lot for that map. And you almost think that has to be the explanation of it because of the way the rest of the series played out. Because we thought, like, holy shit, this is amazing. Was it the name change? Is it the shoes? What was it? What are they gonna bring? And then yeah, I mean, Ascent still goes so hot, but even on once the takes happened, it was like literally just boom, 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 boom. They were there for the trades. It was so nice. They used utility so well.
This obviously is a good example here, round number 9, of just OpTic being at this B site. Like you said, it's not necessarily just blundering into the correct setups here.
Yeah.
OpTic able to get a really good understanding of what V1 are going for. And this is the V1, by the way, that were, one of their defining features was their like methodical play style, the strategic sort of diversity they were able to apply. I mean, the only criticism for V1 was that, like, they didn't always have like the mechanical skill to back up like the intricacy of their post plan setups and sort of how they adapted here. But presumably they've remedied this. But I've got to say, like, this map in general, we can look at the last round, an absolute masterclass in OpTic having a game plan, but also being willing to adapt and just being one step ahead at all times. Crashies, not a round goes by where Crashies doesn't have a kill assist or a trade situation or survives. Perfect efficiency from him over this map. It's a fucking drubbing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one area that, looking back on it, I think was sort of an area that V1 could have improved on and wasn't just like OpTic taking control, was the best opportunities I felt for V1 to find round conversion was when they had full mid control. It was when OpTic was in one of those like really heavy trap setups towards one of the mains. V1 gets all the way up mid, and then they always finish in a B split. It was like their playbook literally didn't know how to take CT from the defenders. Like there was not once that they pushed into spawn and wrapped a heaven and sort of like reverse cleared that site. And I think if there was that playbook element for them, they find a bunch more rounds on attack and potentially find momentum that allows them to convert this a lot more. But it literally felt like that corner of the playbook didn't exist.
And now something spicy came out of the playbook though in map number 2 here, because OpTic excite everybody.
Oh.
Everybody again during agent select. So we get to see finally the adaptation, something that we've seen over in Europe. It is of course the Neon here. Neon is able to get past a lot of this early round utility. Like look what Victor's doing here on this particular map. Really able to play fast ahead of a ton of this stuff. Obviously the fast lane coming up there is actually huge in terms of getting onto this site. Look at this. I mean, very interesting, right? The idea looks good, and it gets OpTic off to a 2-round lead early. It's nice to see that in NA.
It's so I feel like Neon is so puggy. I like hardly anyone can follow her. It puts so much more of that striker mentality in somebody. Oh my word. It's fun as hell to watch. I will not deny that. But I really think it takes so much to have a Neon work with everybody on the squad. And that Neon needs to be ready to take every single fight alone because no one can run as fast as you. That shit's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, you
like
really No, you go.
Okay. Okay.
I haven't heard from you in an hour. You go.
I didn't want to intrude. You know, this is the NA segment. This isn't it's not my time to speak. So I think Neon, especially on Haven, when it comes to defensive side aggression, it's just so much fun to play though. Like you get those stuns down early, you go for some of that map control, you can see so much from your opponent's hands, and I guess like there's going to be a really, really big distinction between disciplined Neon players and non-disciplined. Like if you get a little bit overeager with her, you can find yourself miles ahead of your teammates. Sure, like that's something that's going to require a lot of getting used to. But when it comes to actually taking control, man, you can get concussed. Like her concusses are so quick, and they can cover so much ground if you know your angles. You pop out 2 of them, they bounce off. And all of a sudden, you know, you've got 3 less corners to clear as you're coming out. Or if there is someone in those corners, they are dead. Like, they're not winning that fight. I'm not 100% convinced on her being in the meta on Haven as for every team. But I think that maybe 10, maybe 20% of teams can benefit from having her if they can figure out how to implement her properly. I think that's what Riv is saying. Like, it's really fucking tough to
It's so hard.
play her well.
I mean, it's all about sort of like you just mentioned, understanding your spacing and how far you can extend with her.
Yeah.
Because like the whole premise of Neon is I'm just gonna run at this site faster than can be answered and break your setup. Then I'm gonna leave. Then I'm gonna go to another site and do the same thing. And on Haven, I'm also gonna go to the third site and do the same thing there. And so I've broken your setups literally everywhere. It's taken me 40 seconds. We now have the entire rest of the round to just do what we want. The caveat to that is if when you break one of those setups, you overextend it all and you end up dying, your team's kind of hosed. So it'll be interesting to see how teams sort of take this idea and evolve it, because I think once you get to the defensive side, Neon's insane. I mean, being like the huge proponent of flank strategy that I am, I think Haven's one of the best maps, if not the best map in the game for consistent flanks. And Neon just being able to sprint on that flank is real scary. Like
I think
really scary.
I think we're seeing that a little bit more with teams kind of looking at what would be like a late game win. As Knights played Sage, they had to play attack on Acend, but they got to defense and literally won 90% of the rounds, right? And then you pick this Neon knowing it's going to be good on defense, weather the storm on attack if you're going to be that much stronger. And looking at that like late game dynamic is so cool to see how teams can kind of put that together, knowing they may be on a different pick for a map being on attack, but then they know their defense is like that much stronger just because of one agent, and you just weather the storm. I think is a really cool idea to look at for teams.
I mean, one agent that was, I mean, of large impact was Penny over the course of this map. His Jett looked really good. We talked about, you know, how important that FKFD is, especially on a kind of a map like this where Jett is, you know, obviously playing a bit of contact early and trying to sort of tailwind away. Penny shit on OpTic. Yeah, I think what round 12. This is round 12
It's
here.
a
I think,
technical
yeah.
term.
Yeah, absolutely. He shit on
Absolutely.
them, dude. This guy's fucking. That's fucking crap. For someone who was so quiet in map number 1, I guess everybody on the side of V1 was. Guy really came alive here. This is pretty gross.
You're basically pitting the two movement agents against each other and saying go, right? And Penny's like, I'm way better than this Neon. It was really cool to see. But yeah, opening up the site, being able to disrupt, you can kind of see the differences and how it's affected, right? She can flash, or I'm sorry, she can smoke, or Penny can smoke and then get in, and everybody follows that. It's a little bit, I wouldn't say more chaotic. It's, I think, a little tougher because of all the weapons that are shooting at you. But yeah, Penny, once he realized what he, I think, had to do and had Effie's flashes behind him and a Trailblazer to follow, he literally took control of this.
This is round 15, I think, which yeah, again, it's just another huge round for Penny. On those sites,
Good.
4K for him there. Scary stuff. Now this, yeah, plus 15. We like that. Yeah, 24-9, very solid. I want to show. We're going to skip ahead on the run of show here because I want to bring up the interview that we had at the end of the match, because Effie's kind of talked about how V1 were ready, or at least able to sort of respond to the presence of a Neon there, and sort of why they're able to do that. So let's roll this clip here and hear that from Effie's, because I thought this was very interesting and a particular strength I think that V1 have in an ever-changing meta.
I think it was just a question of getting adjusted to what they did, because we had a rough idea what's gonna happen because of what our coach kind of told us. It was just like putting it in practice, so like getting used to the comp a little bit. But as soon as we kind of figure out what their plays was, we kind of knew what they were doing, and it was like pretty straightforward after that. I feel like. I think it was just a question of getting adjusted to what they did, because.
Remix.
I think it was just a question of getting adjusted to what they did.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. It's kind of like, all right, he's going to hit a homer. He usually shanks it. Let's set up for a foul ball, right? If you know a Neon's going to be blasting into sight, back up. You're behind default. Retake isn't a problem. You're going to hear the concussors go off. Exactly. It's much safer to go in after that.
How does that affect your timing though when you're on attack against the Neon and you're trying to hit a sight, and you know that like clock's ticking, eventually a Neon's going to fucking turn up and a wedged tree branch up your backside? Like, does that impact the way you go about executing against a defensive Neon?
Yes, if the Neon's actually flanking.
Right.
From what I saw, OpTic didn't flank nearly as much as they should have, in my opinion, and they instead were using the Neon's mobility to flood rotate super, super fast, which is more of like, it's like the classic Sentinels approach to Haven. That was the best way to play Haven for like the entire first year the game existed. I think that the game has matured pretty significantly past that meta at this point. And so I think that the adaptation that Effie's sort of touched on there was more on their defense versus the Neon's attack than it was on their attack versus the Neon's defense.
Right.
They hemorrhaged a lot of the early rounds by just overfighting sites. Yeah. They were like, we're going to contest this. The Neon's going to come in, break our setup. And then they overfought it. They ended up giving frags to the Neon way too much. And then after losing a few, they decided to fall into a setup where they were much more willing to play retake and much more willing to be like, you're going to come in and break our setups. Well, we're just not going to really have a super firm setup in the first place, save a bunch of our utility, and then basically bunker up after you've done your shenanigans. And I think that worked really well for them. And then when it got to the other side, I mean, I think OpTic just didn't leverage it to its fullest potential.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe they brought it out a little too early then, if they weren't ready to sort of make
use. You need to watch TL first.
Yeah, apparently. Okay, so let's move on to the third map here. By the way, losing teams on maps in this series got a total of 12 rounds. So these were all fucking blowouts, one way or another. Maybe not what you expect for a match of the week, but a lot to dig into here. On Icebox, it looked like version 1 were extremely comfortable defending this map. After we got the first, I think they lost their first sort of gun round, which set them back a little bit here. And this is round 7. And this is just, watch V1, how they sort of get ready to hold this side. Straight away, Viper's pit there. They're ready to receive any sort of attention. Penny gets into a disgusting spot and is able to find the first kill here.
I love that. I actually love the chamber on Icebox because it allows you to do push-up plays like this where somebody may have gotten towards tube, but your trademark's tube. So you can then hold this position. They still had somebody back in towards B, so you can go and retake it easy peasy. But their ability to source information right away with that push towards mid. You shoot one. All right, well, what? I think they took down Sova first, right? So what side are they going to initiate on? They're going to have to group up and get together for all util use. You wait for that to happen, and they like the plays were read like that, and they're able to take their opponent out.
I think it was pretty impressive. Obviously, V1 go the Vipers bit before they can get suppressed, so they know 0 points going to be coming in. So instantly, they bust that out, and then it looked like. I mean, the thrust up mid by the Jett is so crucial because at that point, OpTic are like, oh, we couldn't shut down the Viper util on A. We have to get out of A now, and now we're just getting shit on in the middle of the map here. So, I mean, yeah, you've got to be. I mean, yeah, you got to be pretty quick here. I think Xana knew exactly what was at stake there.
So awkward.
Yeah, obviously, because that's what Victor's out to do on this kind of map here. I think they throw a Sonic in there either way, but I think that as I sort of watch this series, especially this sort of map, surprised that OpTic aren't able to get more done because Ye actually has a pretty insane performance individually. I think, and he's really able to sort of put his team in a winning position. Like, how the fuck do you? So they lose 13-5. Just spoilers. Ye's able to go 25 and 14.
Yeah,
so it's fucked up. I mean, he gets like what here? This is round number 12 here. This is obviously Ye with the tour de force, if I'm not mistaken.
To be fair, he's disgusting with Headhunter. But he takes off so many heads. So pat a few on there, but you're right. Like he's almost traded here, but if he gets that frag and then dies in a situation later, right? It's almost like this frag means nothing. So it's just unfortunate in the way his frags didn't return too much, right? That one was going to be traded anyways. They get in. And then it expects to be the post plant or the moment they come into the site where you start losing people. And Ye wasn't the first to peak because he can't be everywhere.
I mean, here, you know, Penny obviously having a fantastic second map here is in a position to do some damage. But I mean, we can sit back and enjoy this and see how Ye manages to to keep OpTic in this kind of game because really, I mean, without him, this is a fucking disaster. An absolute unmitigated mess. I mean, yeah, you can see what OpTic now have to rely on. Ye with 10 HP, by the way. I think he's had 3 kills so far, or rather 2 kills so far in this round. I think he ends up getting 5k because of res, right?
Yeah.
We'll watch and enjoy this.
He hit every single one of his chamber ults, didn't he?
He's insane. And I mean, this might come off as like a little reductive and oversimplifying, but I think OpTic running no Jett on this map is actually just throwing straight up. I think that this is a map where no one has needed flashes on it for the last year. Why are you trying to force in a KO over Jett when this is statistically probably Jett's highest impact map in the entire pool?
Yeah.
It just
Huge
feels nonsensical to
game.
me. Well, it's a huge elevation game, and I think that the fundamental sort of indefensibility of both of these sites makes it so that having an untradeable anchor on both sites is absolutely critical to being able to succeed or fail here. Like having the chamber on one site, the Jett on the other is suffocating. Having just a chamber on one site and no real aggressive spear point just feels horrendously awkward, and I don't think the EV on flashes is enough to ever make me want to make that trade-off.
I think the thing that a lot of players have been feeling recently is like pretty nerfed when it comes to Icebox. I know that Dirk has been taught a lot that like he just has a really rough time on that map as a Jett, but I 100% agree with you. Like you can have a feeling the majority that recently maybe Jett hasn't been feeling as strong, but I would put that down to you needing to change how you're playing your Jett then, as opposed to let's fucking throw a KO in there and
you're going to be happy about this next meta, right? So
exactly.
Well, and I would almost go so far as to say as well that like Jett might feel slightly worse. She's still probably the best option. Worse doesn't mean bad. When she was, if you have her baseline in the fucking stratosphere, and then it drops down 2 notches, it's still better than everything else. Hate to break it to people.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
So you know, obviously Yay is the only thing that keeps that remotely competitive here. But I found it's quite interesting actually. We sort of heard in this post-match interview sort of like the mentality of sort of playing around or dealing with that kind of play here. So Effie's kind of lets us in on the mentality of sort of dealing with you know, an individual going nuts like Yay here in this interview snippet.
Nah, no, not at all. We don't get very tilted in matches, no matter. We can get 1v5 6 rounds in a row, and it really doesn't matter. If it's a scrim, it's a different story, but in matches, we're very, very focused, and, like, I don't know, like, like, Jordan's sitting right beside me, and, like, I kind of messed up the play, and I would just fist bump it and, like, go next, honestly.
Obviously not an issue for them. Obviously talking a bit of shit there as well. I think Yay is definitely able to be, you know, when you see El Diablo running wild on the server, I'm quite sure it gives you some pause for thought. But I mean, we have 3 4-0 teams right now going into next week. The Guard, Cloud9, and version 1. So we get C9 Guard and we get version 1 Sentinels coming up next week. So just yeah, fucking absolute bangers here. So we get the battle of top table. This also, by the way, means that you know, conversely, we need the battle of the bottom table teams as well. So, yeah, I mean, we got NRG and Rise. I mean, both those teams are a little bit hard to get a read on. 100 Thieves, EG. OpTic Game, we get to go up against Knights, which really could be a close one. And XSET versus Luminosity has the potential to sort of run pretty close here.
At least all the games will be competitive. They might not be meaningful, but at least they'll be competitive.
Now, we're on patch 4.04 next week. So how does that sort of throw a spanner into the works here? What's like the first thing that comes to mind when you consider now how, you know, obviously how the game might just be changed up next week?
If Sentinels can't perform well on this patch, they're a tier 2 team.
Dude, Sick even
like
Sick
there's
said.
Clip that, send it to everyone. I want to get flamed by Sentinels players. If Sentinels can't succeed on this patch, they're a tier 2 team. It is literally their dream material. They're getting everything they could ever want and more. So
Sick,
no excuses.
Sick even said they think this favors them. This meta favors them. And I actually am almost tilted by that statement because a meta shouldn't just favor you, meaning it pulls you out of a rut.
Yes,
a meta should favor you because you're good at something.
We refuse to adapt. Ergo, the patch is going to reward us for not adapting.
Oh
Smile.
my word!
Oh yeah, just wait until it comes back around, fam. You know what I mean? Oh shit! All right, Riv, thanks for joining us here on the show,
Thank you
man.
so much.
Great to get some of your insights, of course, and I hope you have a fucking great week with these matches, mate. They're going to be fun.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Have a good one. Enjoy.
Oh dear. All right, everybody. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about EMEA. We had a few matches there this week and also the snafu with G2. So stick around. More Valoranting on the other side of the break. If you've been enjoying Valoranting, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get every episode hot off the presses. Welcome back, everybody, to Valoranting. Now it's time to turn our attention across the Atlantic and talk about VCT EMEA because of obviously there's been significant disruption in that region due to a madman. So obviously the matches have been reduced in, at least we had less matches this week. It's a better way to put it here. But still a lot to talk about, a lot to dig into. So we're going to be activating Mitch and, of course, bringing onto the show once more, Jess and RyanCentral to help us break down a little bit of what happened in Europe. What's going on, Ryan? Look kind of fly, man. That beard's actually getting some length on it, homie.
Yeah, we're getting through the shit stage of having a beard, I feel. But yeah, it's still patchy and stuff like that. But it's starting to match the hair on my head for the most part, which that needs cutting. It's just literal pubes on the top of my head. Anyway, EMEA, let's go.
Thank you for that introduction,
Yeah,
Ryan.
I
That
love
was
it.
so
I mean,
good.
Jess,
Wow.
your beard conspicuously absent though. Just wanted to point that
Yeah,
out.
look, no, you just can't see it. I'm stroking it now.
Right.
It's
Okay.
very nice. Yeah.
Looks like it's bleached, right?
Yeah,
You
exactly. I
bleached the
mean,
beard. Okay.
yeah, exactly. That's what a lot of us women do. So, yeah.
All right. Now, look, obviously, look, I mean, a lot of serious undertone when talking about VCT EMEA this week because of the atrocities that are being obviously committed in Ukraine and the way that it's affected players and organizations and, you know, and everybody involved sort of on the broadcast side of things. So before we dive into talking about the games, I thought Daniel Ringland's sort of very poignant and timely message on the broadcast should be shared again. So this is obviously DC of England talking a little bit about sort of his and Riot's stance on what's going on in Ukraine and maybe how he might be able to help. So, how about you?
Before we resume the EMEA VCT matches this week, we want to take a moment to acknowledge the war in Ukraine. Our thoughts are with you all, the fans, teams, players, broadcasters, and absolutely everyone around the world affected during these terrible and uncertain times. We've decided to resume the competition this week after checking in with teams and staff, and we will continue to offer our ongoing support to them. Riot Games is supporting and donating to the International Medical Corps. Check out riot.com/donate and join us in our efforts to help the IMC's teams inside Ukraine. The IMC are responding to the crisis by expanding access to medical and mental health services for those living in affected communities. If you can spare it, please consider supporting them. For those joining us for this afternoon's broadcast, we hope the show can provide you with some brief solace. The broadcast team, myself, and everyone involved in the VCT send our love to each and every one of you. Take care.
So this obviously prefaced the broadcast in EMEA this week with a number of teams sort of unable to participate. We don't really know still, what the situation is going to be with teams like Gambit and such like that. But obviously this is the charity or the cause that Daniel referenced here, the International Medical Corps. A great way to sort of get involved in helping provide relief to those in need. So let's talk about the matches here. First of all, let's bring up the sort of the results coming into this week, I think, and give us a snapshot of EMEA sort of. Oh no, these are our results. Excuse me. So we had 3 matches this week here. Obviously, the Acend versus G2 game was going to be a highlight, but let's just put our hand over the scores right now. And Jess, Ryan, Mitch, love to get your thoughts on outside of the obvious here, what are the things you're hoping to glean from this week? What are the questions that are sort of hanging over VCT EMEA coming into week 4?
Probably the Turkish community being a little bit confused as to who is going to be the Kings of Turkey. I mean, look, I came into Berlin, I sat down with, both of the big brains, Lothar and Yinsu, especially Yinsu, knowing the, Turkish community so well. And I was like, all right, my numbers say this. What does, the community say about that match? And they're like, SMB going to wipe the floor with BBL. And I was like, ooh, my numbers kind of say a little bit different. Or maybe I should trust you guys because, you're in the know. So I was like, okay, we'll see how the match goes. And we started watching the match, and I turned into it, and I was like, yeah, this is not looking too hot for SMB. I was like, ah, man. Sometimes the numbers don't always lie. But on paper, SMB should be better than they are. So it's, also difficult to quantify the Turkish, teams at the moment.
Sure.
Well, depends. I wouldn't say it's difficult. I'd say they're shit. But,
I mean, in the entire group, sure, but compared to each other, who do you go for if you're a Turkish fan?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think for a long time it's been BBL, SMB, football is fighting for that top spot, and depending on the iteration of the roster, you end up with one of these guys on top of Turkey, and ultimately that amounts to meaning nothing on the international scale. I think it's a region that still needs to establish itself. They can contend, they can take maps. They can take a series off top teams, but they have not got the consistency right now. I didn't watch this match because I don't care. Neither of these teams are making it through to the playoffs, and I just gave myself an extra couple hours in bed that day.
Ooh.
Nice.
Unfortunately, I couldn't do the same because I was fucking casting it.
Yeah, Ryan, you were there. Obviously, with a smile on your face.
Yeah, I especially I think my personal highlight was the 5-minute tech pause that we had in round 2. To be fair, that seemed to be much more engaging in some parts of the match.
Jesus Christ! I hope we don't have Turkish viewers.
I don't mind. First of all, I think it's a case of some people don't say nasty stuff about Turkey, the region, because they're scared of the Turkish fandom, which I think is a bit
I might get some DMs. Oh,
yeah, but I think it's a case. It's more of a case to me that it's not so much that Turkey has been crap as a region. It's just that both SuperMassive Blaze and BBL have come into this. SMB, a bit more expectation on them just because of what they managed to do last year. The squad has mostly stayed the same, as well as bringing some other big Turkish players from other rosters, right? You've got Glove, who I am not a big signing brought to the team, let's be honest, but I think that does kind of moves like Zistu, I think is a pretty good player to put on that team, considering it's mostly a young core of players that need a bit of guidance, I suppose, after Power left. Both these teams need time to grow, but it's kind of like they were just good enough to qualify, but they have to adapt quickly in a group where everybody's just out for blood, right? Guild need to prove that they're a global elite team. You've got Fnatic in there, you've got Acend. There's a lot of expectation on those guys. So really, SMB and BBL just had a tough group. If they were up against London United or Big or even maybe Na'Vi, there's a chance that they could scrape by some stuff. But in all honesty, if BBL and SMB were in separate groups, they're probably both going to get relegated, which would be even worse for the Turkish scene as a whole. It's not so much that just the scene is crap and these teams are crap by extension. It's that there's not too much time for these teams to grow into anything else. The same way that Giants, for example, or Excel or Vitality, those other teams that were really close, they would be suffering from the same shit. I mean, Big is suffering from the same shit. This was just frankly like I even just talking. I should have was like shot sent of just my face, like head in my hands, kind of. Can I just not? Can I just go home now, please?
Oof. I mean, right. I look, obviously not a great show, not a great showcase for the Turkish region here. Eventually, we had to see these two teams play against each other, and again, not an expected result for the community. I think in terms of who they expected to come out on top, this might be a changing of the guard, so to speak, in the Turkish region now with BBL able to make something happen here. Let's move on to this this other match. I think these first two matches less notable, but we're definitely looking for like maybe some of the key takeaways here. London United obviously are teams having to win the one matchup, but losing to Na'Vi sort of hurt them. Their only win comes against Big, and I think the way Mitch described the match, it didn't make me feel like I wanted to go back and necessarily watch it. That London United Big game. Did we get any improvements here, Mitch, up against Team Liquid? Haven's the first map, so you know what that means. It's time for Neon.
It was really interesting to me because coming into it, I even said, I think I brought it up on the broadcast that I had said to Tom off camera that this was going to be a real quick day, not just because it was only one game for us, but because it was Team Liquid London United. London United played what I would consider to be pretty poorly against Big. That game was painful to watch. And they came into this week, I just assumed Liquid would 2-0 them and we move on. That did happen, and I guess if I hadn't have watched the game, I might be sat here going, yeah, well, there's shit, let's move on. But this is a team that actually played really clean. I mean, it's worth mentioning, when it came to Haven, they lost the pistol round to start things off. They still scraped together the rounds to end up on 5 by the end of the half. They win the pistol round in the next, and then things did kind of fade away. So maybe after the first kind of 3 quarters of the match, it definitely did start to look like Liquid were the dominant force to be reckoned with, but we also prefaced that second half by saying, look, Liquid on the attack can beat some of the best teams in the world. For me, the question I had coming into this series was, were London going to be like a bunch of headless chickens running around hoping that Malzy and maybe Feku could take a couple of heads and that they'd have a chance? And actually, I think they won most of their rounds based on really solid team play. I think if they had shown up individually as well, they might have won the map, but ultimately Team Liquid out-aimed them, and when you've got a team with Yumpy, Navera, and Scream in the second half on the attack, able to do whatever the hell they want, yeah, that's going to happen. But it's a step in the right direction for London United.
That was a good game. I won't lie. I mean, we did preface it on the desk going into it that, like, they considered themselves to be the best team, like, compared to Team Liquid, and that Team Liquid had the best individually skilled players. And I was like, absolutely. I would write that on a board and be absolutely happy putting all of my money on that. And London United going into the game, I was a little bit worried that from what I saw them when I did like the partner streams and then the closed qualifiers and everything like that. Sorry, I got my misses in the background. And with all the closed qualifiers, I was like thinking, it's a good opportunity for them to play the same team-oriented play that they had then and let the first 2 weeks of shakiness just slide off of them. Like, now's the time to sort of show us what you did back then. And we finally got a bit of that team. I will say it's not as impressive as some of the team play I saw during some of the qualifiers. Obviously, it's easier to look better against easier opponents. I get that. But I would say it was much cleaner and they were much more confident in those qualifiers than they are now in the league. So it's like a bit of a toss-up for me. Like, we can clearly see that in a team environment, when they swing together, they move together, they combo their utility, it looks way better than Team Liquid. But I think Mitch hits it on the head. Like, if they had that 25% extra individual skill each, that game goes third map. That looks like way closer than the scoreline would have it.
Okay, I mean, I wonder what that sort of says about Team Liquid then, for the time that they've had now to get Nivera sort of acquainted to the sort of protocols and playstyle, because here on Split, I'm kind of curious to get your guys' thoughts about the composition from Liquid, right? Because it doesn't really have a lot of like info gathering tools at all. You know, Sage, Breach, Cypher, I guess, to maybe some degree can do that for you, but not with the consistency of, you know, like Sky or sort of KO. Whereas there's a KO here for London United, who's not able to really do too much at the end of the day. But, you know, what are your thoughts about this? Because Liquid on defense look much more comfortable. Their attacking rounds look like they are, again, just really trying to swing with the Breach util and create opportunities early.
I guess it comes down to like what tools you have as a team. Highlighting on the desk and indeed in the interviews for London, that London United had better team play. It's because they focus on that more, because they kind of have to. If they come in and they play the way Team Liquid do, like look at this comp they're running, right? They've taken out your KO, they're putting in a Breach. This is a team that wants to very much peek on the back of these flashes. They want to use their utility, not just to take space, but to make you fight for it, because they know, hey, 9 times out of 10, I fight for this, I fucking win because I'm Scream or because I'm Yumpy. Like, they can do whatever the hell they want in a lot of these fights because teams haven't been able to punish them for it or challenge them. So this is a team that I don't think they're lagging behind in the team play department because they're not capable of it, or because they're not, you know, the work they're putting in isn't really panning out. I think they look at it and say, hey, we've actually got the players to take a much more aggressive stance on the game and not sit back and go, ooh, well, where are they playing? How are we going to find space? They're like, fuck you. I'm coming mid. I'm going to kill all of you. Here's a flash. Here's a stun. You've lost the round. That's how they play, and it works.
Contact off this util every single round.
You know, it'd be weird if you saw a Scream sat down bottom mid going like, guys, I can't peek. I think he's holding me.
You say that,
like, no.
but he said he's going to support now, which is his words, right?
The
which is
Scream on
the
support.
weirdest pseudo duelist support, Sage main, I don't know, battle Sage. I'm not sure what to quantify him as at the moment yet. I think it was very clear though that, and I hate referencing Split because London United's attacks on Split have from day dot been the most horrific thing I've ever had to watch in my entire life. So to give a lot of praise to London United, it means counting out their attack side Split. So let's pretend that doesn't exist, and then we give them all the compliments for everything else.
Right.
I'm ridiculous they've tried to re-add this to their map pool when they can't attack for the life, and that is half of the job of that map, bro. You're going to lose it every time if you keep doing that. But I will say that it is very clear that like guys like Nivera, I mean, what we saw Yumpy do in the first map, you're right, the individual skill is there, but when they had problems, it came down to team problems. When they swung out and thought they were better than the other person, that is great, 7 times out of 10. Now, that's not going to bode well if you got that 3 times out of 10, then someone else can't trade you. I don't think they play tight enough, but it could be an easier and more efficient way of playing the game. Sure, they can do their 1v1s. I just think if you have efficiency and winning in mind without stress, then the way that they're going about it, and Mitch is talking about, is all fun in principle, but in practice, it doesn't have longevity.
So one quick thing on the point of Scream supporting, when I heard him say that, man, I laughed to myself because look at this clip first of all, I guess.
Yeah,
God.
What is that? That gun up time is insane.
Yeah,
is it
Headhunter.
0.2?
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think it's I think it is 0.2. It's
0.2.
insanely low. Like oh my god. But when Scream was initially brought into the Fish 123 roster, so obviously he had a stint on Prodigy, and even like the data for most of those games is lost because it's like so far back in time. But when he came on to Fish 123, which later became the Liquid roster, he played Reyna for the first couple of games, and we're all like, yeah, man, it's Scream. He's coming in. Of course, he's playing a Reyna. And he started to play a Breach. Now, I linked our production in our Discord, a VLR page. I don't know if we can pull it up, but there's one of the first games that he played on Breach. There it is. Yeah, that was up against Party Pirates. That's Scream supporting.
Wow,
this is like,
good team too.
We saw him pull out the Breach, and I was like, all right, guys. We're going to call a quick tech pause here. We got a remake. Scream's picked the wrong agent. And then I looked at the comp and went, wait, no, does he mean to put, no. And yeah, this dude was running around 70 to 47. It's just stupid. And yeah, like you said, that's a good team. That's Party Pirates. That was
that's
at the
against
time.
like Shao,
the team.
SSK.
All of those still
Angel,
active pros, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like that's a seriously respectable win, and he was pulling out a support agent back then. So I think like, and doing it right, he was actually playing early round support. Even though
But
he
wasn't
still
that
ended
when
up.
Breach had his gun up much quicker after deploying util?
No, this was pre-buff.
No,
Oh,
this
really?
was a
Way
long
before
time
pre-
ago.
This was
eons, the
Rogue
dark
pick.
ages.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, no.
This is. I'll tell you when this was. July 17th. Patch 1.03. So that would have been 2020, right? July
Yeah.
17th.
Yep. It was
Mm.
about 4
Long,
weeks
long
after
time ago.
launch.
Fucking
Yeah,
hell.
not anywhere near the duelist breach sort of thing. But I think
Yeah.
like there is never going to be an agent that suits what Scream does ever. And there's been plenty of agents that
And
have
if
come
there
out that
is,
we've
God
gone.
help us all.
Yeah, well, no, because it's like we've seen it. Like KO, we've gone. This would work with him to an extent. It fucking didn't. Neon as
That
well.
was
You sort of
awful.
look at it. If anything, we should be talking about how Soulcast has just gone. You know what? I'm doing this. I'm going to be that entry. I'm going to be the one fulfilling that role. And he's looked so good doing it. And it doesn't matter what screenplays. To be fair, like his Sky has been serviceable at times at best. When you have a world class player like Scream being serviceable, it's still not good enough, right? However, he's still able to have that kind of performance backing and sort of being secondary entry to what Soulcast is doing. A lot of that success was found for Liquid in this series because of that. I mean, the fundamentals for London have been somewhat good to watch anyway, but they don't have that kind of like that magic, I suppose, that like what made Sentinels great or G2 before that, just the ability to turn around on its head. When it looks bad for London United, it never typically sorts itself out unless Boo has his moments, which he does, but most of all, Molsey has that kind of impact. For Liquid, they have it in abundance. And if anything, I feel that they play a bit too set play E when it comes to like the Neon setups on A-Long when they're playing on defense, the kind of Neon stuns, then Chamber playing in various angles and stuff. When those kind of plays go to port, it feels like Liquid kind of overthink it and they just get caught out in worse situations. When realistically, I want to see them kind of let it go a little bit. I feel like they're a bit too rigid sometimes with how they're approaching the game because if anything, all 5 of these players now have so much world-class talent, they can lean on that and rely on that a lot more than what's the set play, guys. I remember Sliggy saying that we should maybe do this, by then Molsey's just ran in and got a free K. You know, like that's what's happening Liquid, I think, for me at the moment.
Let's move on and talk about our match of the week then. Because out of the 3 games, this one was definitely one of the most hotly anticipated. World champions Acend go up against the G2, obviously sporting a new look every other fucking week. This time, of course, though, it's going to be Mixwell in the lineup after we finally, you know, I got a fucking whiplash from all that shit. But it looks like G2 have finally sort of settled on what they want to do here. This started off very interestingly. Bind's the first map in this series, and it's an Acend pick. And you know what Acend do on this map? They fuck people up. I remember watching G2 get dominated by Acend on this map multiple times. It doesn't go that way at all. Nukia is a freak. This is disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, what a pleasure to be able to watch Acend on Bind and then to be able to watch them go up against the new quote unquote new G2 roster with Mixwell being back. I mean, this was such a showing, and I oftentimes wonder, and this happens in multiple esports titles, is that you know, you'd have a map you're known for being the kings and queens on, all of a sudden everyone's insta-banning it against you and vice versa, or you're not able to play it as much as you usually would, and you're not as versed on it. You don't scrim it as much because you believe you're the best on it. You also don't get competitive experience on it because it's never in the map pool as a result. I think Acend got a real big wake-up call. I actually don't think Acend has played well this entire stage thus far at all. I think for anyone to disagree with me, it would be silly, because if you quantify that compared to their, you know, their LAN performance, it's extraordinarily different. So Acend is probably very lucky, you know, G2 ran out of steam because, yeah, they let it all bind.
What?
It's just
I mean,
ridiculous.
what the fuck, man?
My bullet
Mid-air
point in my
redirect
notes was
stuff.
Nookie's raise movement is not real. That's literally all I could write about it.
Man, just tracer blinked is what I was gonna say. Like I thought that I was back in the Overwatch servers watching that kind of movement. It was just
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I think
and Junkrat literally does that shit. Has it been so fucking long, Ryan?
yeah, I know, right? It's just I was like Farah. I was like, where's the ult? Where's everything coming out together? Like, is there going to be a Sombra at this point? I mean, For me as well, I think that this has been a little bit of a long time coming. I think that G2 played into it really well, considering they didn't have a fucking choice whether they could play this map or not, all things considered. But they came in with that
Such a
kind of
harsh
new
punishment.
composition. It's a comp that we've not seen Acend play up against, right, with the likes of a Chamber. But I also think that they were punished a lot for not being an Astra team on this map. And I think that was the most evident when it came to that showers control, because as a Brimstone, you kind of have a choice to make of like, all right, I have this utility. I want to save as much as possible for these fights to try and take showers. I don't want to use my smokes. I need to save them. I don't really want to use my molly. I want to save that. So I think that that's an area of the map that G2 doubled down on. And then they just exploited over and over again. Hoodie played really well over on that B side, just with the teleport play, just flashing through and finding space. But Acend, not so much that the Chamber was the deciding factor, but that kind of like composition and the way of playing really threw Acend through a loop, who obviously couldn't anti-strat the team because, first of all, they didn't know that composition was going to be in play, but also they didn't know who they were going to be even playing with all of the things going on at the moment. And also, did they expect Mixwell to be re-signed to the roster as well? Like, there's no way to prep for this team. So Acend could only do so much, and I think G2 fully exploited that.
Yeah, why hide strats from your opponents when you can just drop and pick up your players constantly?
Yeah, exactly.
Much more effective way of trying to like.
You're gonna have 12-player rosters. We were saying about
Hide the
Overwatch.
fucking
We're gonna have like
roster,
Chipset
yeah.
jumping in on the Doomfist on one of these like maps.
It's probably important to note because, like, if you look down at Mixwell, it looked like he quote unquote didn't do as good as everyone else. Obviously, Hoodie went nuclear with the opening kills, made a bunch of space. You referenced that before, Ryan. But I don't want his like KD to detract from how much position he held on that map continuously. I don't know why Acend, and this is a thing we brought up on the desk, and Lothar was pulling his hair out, which he has the most hair out of any analyst I know in all of Valorant. So if he doesn't have hair, he's going to look like the rest of you baldies. But what I will say is that it was very clear that Acend refused to destroy any kind of utility from Chamber anywhere across the map. And so as a result, I don't know if he would continue to do it in a predictable motion, but he continued to lay down his util as he pleased and just held an entire site almost solo 99% of the time. TP back, managed to hold power positions for a lot of time on. I think a lot of the success of G2, especially on defense, came from him being able to be rest assured that the team can hold other parts of the map because he has that power position. I don't know whether Acend is so, it like scrims people who never play Chamber, never scrims bind, as I said before, but whatever it was, for them to just let him run around with his util like that was just, one, silly, and two, showed us that Mixwell can have a very good supportive / fraggy role if he wants to, and I still think he did quite well with that. So I think, something that stats can't show, which I wish we could in the future somehow visualize, because I thought it was really well played.
Yeah. I also want I just wanted to
go.
say as well, like, we're kind of in this weird period with Chamber where teams haven't quite worked out how to approach it necessarily. Like, even with the like Team Liquid London series where we saw like Yampu was sort of used to just sort of holding onto sewers on defense and TPing out, especially going up against the Killjoy like lockdown. But there was that play where Mozzie shocked that's where the rendezvous is. Yampi can't escape. That's the kind of like curve that we're on now, right? Where there's a lot of like cute stuff with Chamber that is now starting to get the anti-shock darts and fragment lineups to kill some of that utility. Acend clearly weren't aware of that, and I think a lot of that utility from Mixwell got away scot-free. Will it do that again in the future? I don't know. I think it's a testament to not only like Pipson and that Vodafone Giants card that never really liked playing the Viper Astra for the long time. They'd still dedicate to Killjoy and stuff. Even G2 were doing that in the qualifiers. It kind of goes to show that there is a little bit of a comp that can have a bit of a difference against the Sense comp when everybody was slowly moving to that like Brimstone and stuff. The frustrating thing now, I suppose, is just now that the meta's changing, it's like, all right, well, this Ascend comp's going to just get augmented again, right? Because Brimstone is a lot more impactful, can have a lot going for them, and Astra's a lot worse. So it's kind of like, remember when like Sombra Goats was beating Goats comp, and then the meta changed, and a lot of people like, I kind of wanted to see where that went, but because the game changed so much, it's like, all right, we kind of have to drop that and move on to what's next.
Remember that, Jess?
Yeah,
The Ghost was beating the Sombra and the Junk.
There are like 5
those
people
things.
that know it.
Yeah,
I
there's
think
like
it's just like it's always interesting to watch the meta change in a certain direction, especially when it's like, all right, this team has been so good on this map with this comp for so long, and then
Mm.
somebody beats them with something a little bit new and a bit different. And it's like, oh, it doesn't matter because everything's changing the next day. It's like, oh, damn, I would have been
Yeah,
curious
that's
to
true. We
see.
didn't get to see
if-
like the natural progression of this
Yeah,
because of
right.
4.04. Yeah, I follow that. I so G2 pick Ascend. I mean, I'm thinking fucking hell. They win bind against Ascend, right? So going into the second map and they get their map pick. I'm thinking, okay, this is happening for G2. They're actually going to do this.
Yeah.
It didn't really happen. I mean, they won the pistol, lost round 2, and I was like, okay, this will actually be a little bit of a struggle. Obviously, Mixwell on the Jett here, you know, which is full circle for this motherfucker. My guy been around. I mean, let's just start from the top here. This first half from G2. So they stumble a little bit early, but they do make a pretty good showing on their attacking side routes. It's their defense against Ascend that really seems to have some holes in it.
There's so many question marks about Mixwell's movement on this map as well. For a map that is meant to be good for G2, it struck me as odd. I mean, look, they got attacking rounds, yes, but even on attack, like there was multiple times we referenced the fact that he would just dash into sight by himself and die. Like, it's just him, and like everyone else is stuck, you know, nana swarms, etc., over towards A main, etc. I'm like, what are you doing? You have no plan for this. You're just dashing in. You're dashing into Cloudburst, for example. You can't see anyone. You can't do anything, and people know you're in there because you're not anywhere else. You can't keep repeating those kind of mistakes. So I still think that Mixwell's leading charge really confused his teammates, I think, a lot. And whether there's a massive confusion in the comms or massive lack of understanding as to what the strategy needs to be on both attack and defense. Again, it was sad to see Nukia have a bad game because he had just had a really good map. Not saying swap them around, obviously, because, you know, we're sick of seeing swaps and everything like that. But Nukia's decision-making is very confident and is very clear to me. And he understands how that is cohesive to the team and the objective of that round. So I don't know if maybe a swap would be more appropriate, because Mixwell tend to always say that he is like the mid to late round support. And if he wants to continue down that road, then he play in a role that does that. Otherwise, if he wants to be the leading man, he has to play like that, but with the team. Like, it seems so disjointed. It was really abrasive to watch sometimes.
I will say, you know, when it comes to G2 in this series, one of the biggest things for me coming in was to look at Mixwell and think, is he filling the boots of Kellogg's? Is he making it worthwhile? But it's so difficult to really see the manifestation of that, because judging purely on a mechanical and a round-around impact, there's practically nobody that's going to live up to Kellogg's. But obviously, it's the weight that it relieves from Nukia's shoulders and all that sort of stuff that really brings the value. They had a tough series though for one key reason. They won a single pistol round, and it was that first round on Ascent that we saw them immediately lose the second and then go down 4-1. You know, in the early halves of every single half in this series, they got kind of shit on. Like, they were always playing from the back foot and having to fight their way up. In fact, you know, that bind game that they were 13-7, it seems like, you know, Ascent should have gotten a few more rounds than that. If they didn't win the pistols, it would have probably been like a 13-2, 13-3 game. That's kind of crazy to imagine how dominant it was. But yeah, these guys really struggled when they went onto their defense on Ascent. Man, it is kind of weird as well, because Mixwell was having such a good time in early frags as well. And defensive side Ascent, well, that's where things get even better for you, surely, but it really didn't.
This obviously,
I feel like a lot.
Sorry, no, as this scrolls, take it away, Ryan. This is obviously just some thoughts from Mixwell here after the match.
Yeah, I think it's more. First of all, like Ascend were just brutally on one. Like Cena just sort of put the game on his back and sort of opened up sights, and it kind of felt like G2 just kind of let that happen a lot of the time. Like, were they not comfortable on just pure retakes because they were constantly trying to have like a Vova playing. You know, as you're going down to the A site, you've got like the boost that you can hide behind. A Vova would be there, or you'd have the KO, for example, pushed up on B main in that little cubby corner. It was a lot of those kind of like, this is gonna get him, and it never did, because CNED would just check those angles. The utility was a lot stronger. And I said it on the broadcast, like, genuinely, like, Ascend looked pissed off. Like, it just sort of felt that they were like, we're not going to just win this map. We're going to, like, make sure that you can't even save a gun. Like, we're going to go hunt you down because we want to, like, bounce back from this. And I feel like, yeah, sure, I sort of agree with Jess's point when it comes to, like, Ascend not looking good. in a sense of how they're playing right now. But when you have a map pool that's looking that relatively comfortable, when the third map of Split looks even better than their main pick of Bind, it kind of goes to show that, like, all right, there's a couple of teams where, like, say, like old Fnatic, when they used to be really good on Bind, once they lost that control of that map and other teams started beating them, they never really had another map to rely on, right? So they were kind of like, do we try and like double down on making our Bind better again, or trying to pick something else? Ascend are like, even if we lose on Bind, we can learn a lot from that. We've got another 4 maps that we can rely on to have impact in, and it's the fact that that kind of performance was taken into Split at the same time.
This, I mean, to quote Mixwell, he said the third map was bad.
It was awful. I don't mean to be rude, but it was just bad.
It reads a little bit like a Harry Potter, you dare use my own spells against me moment, where, like, I don't know why G2 thought running the Ascend comp into Ascend was a good strategy.
It wasn't
Like-
even that. They did it, and then they didn't replicate it. Like, they took it, and then I don't think they knew why they took it. It's like you see people just doing random utility stuff, and they say, well, Ascend does this, you know, Fnatic
It's
does
copying
this.
for the sake of copying without understanding intent.
Look
is the way I
at the
would
man
frame
on
it.
your screen right now. That man did that. He is the OG Omen, and he didn't know how to Omen. It was the saddest thing I had to watch Bone Cold rip through, like, multi-kill after multi-kill from one-ways, and Avova couldn't, for the life of him, do any one-way except near ramp. And you know what he did when he put the one-way on ramp? He didn't watch it. He was half useless that entire game. Half useless. And it was really sad because, like, I was going after the line thing. I was like, yes, get it. Okay, no problem. You lose the second map, no problem. It was really bad. Like, that map was just a poor showing. And I don't know what went on, but I hope that I don't ever see Avova do that again. And if he brings Omen again on this map, then he needs to understand how to use it at least appropriately in some manner.
It definitely does feel like, even looking at his body language in that last fight when he's down on the site, it looks scared at that point, you know? Ascend have almost already won the game at 12-5. If you're going to hear that noise coming towards your site and you're just tucked behind a wall bangable box, go, guys, please rotate quickly. I hear lots of steps. Oh, they flashed me. Yeah, it's not good. You don't want to be feeling deflated like that and controlled, I guess.
Yeah, look, I mean, maybe not the kind of auspicious ending we were hoping for from the match of the week here. And it shows that G2 still has, wow, a lot of work to do. I mean, it's not just G2 though. I mean, we highlighted some even in a winning series, like where Liquid are, looking a little bit shaky here. So for all the depth that this region has, the image of Europe or of EMEA maybe suffers slightly for not being able to see these CIS teams compete, right? Because that is definitely where a lot of that strength is. And if, G2 and Liquid have to go up against these rosters, these Gambits, even FPXs to some degree going forward, like, there's definitely going to be some concerns about how well they're going to go. Let's look at week 5, the schedule. Now, this is very tentative, right? We don't know how many of these games at all if we get, but let's assume that we're in a world that doesn't have power crazed dictators waging unjustified wars on sovereign states. What are we looking at here? High level, like what stands out to us is some great matches to enjoy.
Well,
To give context, I was just gonna say that every team can still qualify technically. I think maybe the only one that can't is Supermassive Blaze at this point, 0-3. I just don't think the 3 wins is enough. But everybody in Group A, especially even big, can pull this back to qualify because they need top 3 in this one. It's also avoiding relegation, right? So there's no like the typical Reddit stuff of like, all right, this team needs to win that, they need to win this. Like, I think there's pretty much like 20 combinations if my A-level maths really is something that I can rely on. I'm pretty sure that a good 15 or 16 of those team combinations are still available. So it's very much up in the air, probably for the wrong reasons, right? But it does at least go into this final week if other games are played, and I'm sure other stuff's going to be announced on that.
Well,
where you got to sort of keep on top of that kind of stuff because any team can still make it, other than S&B, I think.
So I've linked again for our production the VLR of the upcoming matches for EMEA Challengers, and down the bottom of the page for the actual EMEA Challengers event, they seem to have the games that are happening listed, and then they have so this is for like March 11th, 12th, 13th. they also have the games that are yet to be completed, I think, all as TBD and when they're from. So you can see them here. And this is really where we say, you know, anyone can qualify, but we don't really know how they can. There's a lot of uncertainty here as to when games are going to be happening, you know, from the week that was canceled, obviously, and then the Friday this week, and obviously we had just the single game on the Sunday. So there's a bunch to catch back up on, and then obviously with this situation evolving day on day, hour on hour, we don't know when those matches can take place or if they can. There's been a lot of rumors, you know, players are kind of left in no man's land, just waiting to find out what's going to go down. So yeah, I guess it's a really tough situation for us to say this is where we're at in EMEA, because right now we don't know. I guess everyone's just trying to win whatever game is ahead of them to hopefully still be alive by the end of it. But it's a real toss up, and exactly like Ryan was saying, you know, depending on this matrix of who beats who, and then we can end up with pretty much anyone qualifying. But Tom has been saying that 3 is the magic number. Once you lose 3 games, you're gone.
Right. That's where Supermassive Blaze find themselves right now. Do you guys want to stick around and talk about this whole G2 thing? You guys got thoughts you want to share?
Sure. I think I'm more likely.
I got 5 minutes, so let's get it.
All right. Okay. I think we'll maybe dive into it, Ian, if that's okay. And we'll roll the piece of content towards the end of the show. So let's get caught up with the situation here, right? G2 did a bad thing, apparently. Kellogg's was found during a match to be using the it's called a bug, but it's just a fucking strafe jump. Anybody who played Call of Duty 4 will know that that's just it's an extra splash of color on the canvas of the game. But it happened, right? And now, Mitch, to my understanding, this has been an issue that has been seen before, and punishments have been issued for it. You see, Kellogg's is on this box. He still has all his updrafts and tailwinds, so that means that he used the jump.
Yeah, so you gotta jump and then hover, right? The way Jett hovers, and you'll kind of just about edge it up with some like physics glitch with the corner of it. But it's something that's been around since as long as I can remember, essentially. And you've got, so yeah, that's, if you get up there with no abilities used, right, like this, there you go. That's technically not allowed. Now, from what I understand, previously this has been used by players and not been an issue. Recently, it became an issue. It became, you know, in the rule book as a known banned bug. Then we still have people use it. But depending on where you are in the world, people seem to receive different punishments, at least initially, which is kind of weird.
Oh no, my whole APAC crew sitting there crying a little bit. They're like, damn, wish I could be a G2. I feel you.
Oh my God. So, what was the punishment for G2?
Yeah. Was there a punishment? What the fuck? Yeah, they lost a. What was it? They couldn't ban a map in their next game.
They weren't allowed to ban.
And then they ended up
map,
winning that map anyway. I think that's the most frustrating
great.
thing, right? That like G2 used this exploit against Supermassive Blaze. Has Supermassive Blaze compensated in any way? It's not like it.
No.
Let's be frank.
No, that's
it's
the
not
worst
like
part about
Supermassive
it.
Blaze lost the series because of this bug, but at the end of the day, the exploit was used against them. Did they get anything? No. Acend actually are the ones that get the benefit of being able to ban out 2 maps, and then they still lose on bind, which was kind of like, I was sat there going like, I don't want to talk about the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. I don't want to talk about the G2 exploit. It's all just like happening around me, and I'm like, yeah, Dinko, it's your first cast, isn't it? Yeah. Just get me out.
He did well. He did well.
Yeah, I mean, he dealt with it.
Yeah.
Is there not a precedent for this before, right? Because this has been an issue before, but the ruling has been really inconsistent, I think, in the past, right? Let's talk about the APAC people that you referenced, Jess. So yeah,
Yes.
OG brothers, all right.
Yeah, my OG brothers.
Are they from like Fat Pizza or something like that? They've been
Probably.
disqualified for the remainder of stage 1. So they've been disqualified.
Like literally
stage
for the whole stage. Like not like you lose the game, not you lose the map. Shit you not. Goodbye, bitch. Like imagine just like doing one box jump, which I get it. It is in the list. Read the list. But are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
How
This is
dare
official.
he? How dare he get an extra updraft though? Yeah, fuck him. Ban him for life. Screw the stage. should never be allowed to have a PC again. Obviously, like it's such a small bug. I don't understand what the huge reaction is to it. That like people
We've
are
had
being
people
banned.
literally use like exploitable cams that they know have been unshootable on maps, which
Yeah.
I consider to be way worse than jumping up on a box and not having a fucking updraft. But okay, my opinion doesn't matter. I'm not, part of that management. And we've had people lose a singular map as a result. But these motherfuckers can't play any games in their stage because they used a box jump.
Brothers died for this.
OG brothers died for this, bro.
But it's just it's G2. Like, this is not the first time that G2 have done something and got
Do you
away
think if
with
another
a slap of the
team-
wrist.
Do you
Like,
think
the
if
Pips
another
and
team had
IGL
happened to
thing.
another team, would they have gotten the
Right.
same thing as G2? Like in the EMEA.
I can't think, not even in the EMEA, just in NA either. I think that if this is Sentinels that does this, they get punished. 100 Thieves, it's
Really?
I don't know what it is. It's easy to meme on, but it's kind of like, all right, sure. I can remember a time where G2 benefited from an exploit being used against them. First Strike qualifies against Guild, where they used the whole turret sage wall up on Acend.
Yeah.
G2 are the ones that benefited from that. So it's
Oh,
not
hold
like
on,
they've
hold on.
constantly done that.
In that exact same game, in literally the game that Guild got done for using a bug which was not listed. Let's remember, our bug lists have been dog shit in the MEA for a long time. Now, they're a lot better now than they were back in the stage 1, stage 2 last year days. But back then, we had a genuine situation where Guild uses that bug which is not listed. Nowhere does it explicitly say if you use a what was it, a Killjoy turret to boost a Sage Wall, that you will, that's against the rules. It doesn't technically say that. No, it is implied, and you can sort of read it. What it did say in the rule book explicitly was that you could not use the Elder Flame skin for the Vandal, because if you drop that skin, it would potentially do some shit, like it made your step silent or something. I don't know. There was some audio bug at the time. It was like every 100 times if you did a certain way, or maybe it was random whenever you dropped it. But if you picked it up, you maybe wouldn't have steps that were audible.
I think it was
some shit like that.
It was something like, I think, because it's a Vandal, I'm pretty sure it acted like a Phantom where you couldn't see the trail of shots. Because they were meant to be like on fire. I think it was that. I remember though, because
there was something anyways, right? The point is, it explicitly stated you may not use this weapon during this game. Not allowed. Hatitech used that weapon during that game. The whole map, he's using a Dragon Flame Vandal. So they use a bug that was named, that was said, do not use this weapon. And their opponents use a bug that was sort of implied. Like, you can't get up there. Well, you can wall on the other side and get up there. You can updraft. There's arguments. I agree. They knew that was a bug. But there's arguments to say that, maybe that was allowed. And even though G2 used a bug that was named and explicitly stated, they won the map on default and moved on, and Guild didn't make it, which is just the craziest thing. It's been a consistent trend. And then you add in the G2 just a month ago got a warning for having their coach talking during the game. This is a team that should be walking on eggshells, if anything, as opposed to. But again, I want to be very clear. The bug on Haven, they should not lose the map for that. They did not win because they had an extra updraft. It's not a big deal. What is a big deal to me is to set this fucking insane precedent that if you cheat against me in a game, you'll be punished in your next game. Well, then what happens if I'm playing against fucking Acend today? Oh, well, let's use a few little bugs here and there. Yeah. And now I'm playing against BBL next week? Oh, no, I don't get to ban a map versus BBL as G2. I don't give a fuck. It's absolutely mental that we are now almost introducing to the economy of the game. You've got credits, you've got ult economy, and fuck it, now you've got your map veto economy as well. Throw in a couple of bugs every now and then strategically.
And all that on top of dude. All that on top of caster brownie points as well. Like, you guys are fucking laden with all these different currencies, man. Just insane. You know what's crazy about this though? Is like, Mitch, there's a precedence for this specific bug, right? What happened to God Particles? I think also in APAC as well. They got disqualified, but in consistency an issue. But Riot Games revoked their decision. So instead, they just got a warning. But Brothers didn't get a motherfucking warning. Shit.
Wait, what? Was it both the same bug?
Yeah.
Yeah, same bug.
Like I shit you not. Like, this happens in every esport in APAC. Is that for whatever reason, Like, and I get it. Like, there's APAC South, there's Oceania, there's APAC North, right? So it's all different regions inside a region, whatever. But in APAC as a whole, I shit you not, we will have like Korea do one thing with the rule, and then like Thailand do another, and then Australia and New Zealand do this other thing, and like then they all like somehow verse each other, and you're like, how the fuck do you guys keep up with this? Because if you're all having to like follow this rule, this rule, this rule, and it's all different, I don't know how they put up with it. Because honestly, being a esports player in APAC and especially Oceania is shit to begin with.
Yeah.
It's a fucking, so why should they have to put up with this too? I mean, to be qualified and you're probably making fucking $50 a week, like fuck you. Like if I was there, I'd turn around and be like, fuck you.
The only time there should ever be a difference in rules across regions, and it's not even a believer, this is just basic fucking logic, but the only time there should be a discrepancy in rules is if you're playing on a different patch, and then you should not have a discrepancy with another region that's playing on that different patch. If you are on patch X, you play on patch X rules, and they're not open to interpretation. You can't come along and go, they did cheat, they did have someone talking, but he said, well, that's great job, so that doesn't matter. He said he only said 7 words, not 6, so he's going to get a slightly reduced sentence. Like, what are we doing here? It's if you break the fucking rule, you get this punishment. Why is there so many? It's not even that there's so many gray areas or a gray area. From my understanding, the whole fucking thing is a gray area. Every single case is taken on a case-by-case basis, which is crazy because we end up with these sort of massive inconsistencies where someone in the same, well, geographical region at least, can be banned for the whole stage, and another guy just gets banned, and then they go, oh, actually, never mind, you're good, just don't do it again.
Dream really set us up for the future here, didn't
this
he?
was
like,
2020, dude.
Wow.
He was already putting out
this man was in the future. Holy.
I mean,
smack bang, right? Like,
this
it's ridiculous.
It was this bug that caused that pause in the fucking Furia.
And what's even worse is that the series after this was Na'Vi versus London. Na'Vi used the same bug, and the round gets reset in the same day. And I
can't imagine what it's like.
It's probably one of those cases where initially, like, nobody spotted it on like the production side when G2 did it. And then the second time they were very much aware and they spotted it instantly. Like, sure, I can understand like human error. You can't just stop a match and go, oh no, we have to go back to round number 20. Like, I understand that. It's so difficult to go about it. And even in cases like just champions with the whole Vivo Key thing of just sometimes it takes a while to come around to come to these kind of, all right, they should be punished, but how? I'm pretty sure when it came to the Vivo Key thing, people spotted it instantly and then went to Riot to be like, using this exploit camera, what do we do about it? It wasn't a case of like they spotted it afterwards and it took all that time in order to work it out. Like, they needed that time to work out and talk amongst like probably like the LA side of like Riot to, all right, they used this exploit. How should we go about this? Which makes things kind of harder, right? When every decision is made almost in its own echo chamber.
You wouldn't catch some fucking cyclist, right, injecting some fucking testosterone in the fucking bathroom, right? You wouldn't go, oh, you're gonna have to wait till tomorrow now, mate. You're gonna have to wait till tomorrow, and then you get a shot. You know, you don't call a fucking tactical pause. You ban them. You kick them out. You go, hey, you cheated knowingly. Yeah. Fuck you. Like, listen, you can with the updraft on C, whatever. There's certain bugs that happen during a game, and they just happen. But there's a point where, and especially with Cypher cams, I've got zero fucking leeway with those. Having worked with a team against people using this bug and having to deal with this rule book and make decisions on it. And I know what moral good people do. I know what the good coaches who actually give a shit about being the best and making the best teams, they read those rule books and they go, we can't do this, so we won't do it. But others go, we can't do it, but it kind of doesn't say that we can't do this specific thing, so we can do it and just get a warning and win a round anyways. Because, by the way, back in the day, if you bug abused and the bug wasn't listed, you still won the round. They couldn't stop you, and they couldn't reset the round or anything like that. It was just, oh, well, unlucky they bug abused, so they won't do it again, though. Which, again, highlights how shitty our rule book has been. But we should never be in this situation where we're giving people that opportunity to take the gray area and run with it, or to punish somebody else who's following the rules for following the rules, you know, just because the rules are poorly written. And from day one, we've been way too lax on teams. We still are. It's at the point where I guess if you turn around and just ban somebody or like, you know, make someone forfeit a whole series because they bug abuse, it will seem unreasonable at this point because we haven't done anything for so long, right? It'll be like you sit there silently and then lash out all of a sudden. But at some point, we're going to have to do it because it's just insane how frequently we run into this issue. And it's not going away. It's been 2 years now, and we're still on what feels like day one, or like a slightly improved version of it.
I was gonna say too, like it reminds me of the whole like help Suez thing, which is obviously a meme. But the funniest part about it was like usually I like message my teammates like words of encouragement, you know, like good job, like nice tries. Like why are you talking to your team when you're not supposed to? Doesn't matter what the fuck you're saying in these situations. Like help Suez, good job. Don't fucking talk to them. You're not allowed. It's those kind of.
I
like,
don't know how you even do it. Like I don't like.
how can
Obviously, I didn't
how
have
can
the
you
typing
think that that's a
function
good idea?
in Siege like with my players, but I think to myself, not even when it's unmuted and you're standing behind them and you've got your microphone flipped up and everything as a coach, do you even then think about saying anything in fear that the admin standing 2 meters away from you thinks that you're attempting to say something, even though they're wearing white noise, etc. Even then, I was shit scared. So to then think to type 1 letter, 2 letter, to go through the entire fucking multiple of words and then press enter. You thought about all of those steps the entire way. Like that blows my mind. So
give a shit about the fucking rules.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. And they probably did it many and more times, which we never know about and people won't speak about, or they will years down the track and try and make a meme out of it, of course. So,
you know, the thing is they do believe in second chances. So hopefully he can improve as time goes on.
Two stands for in G2.
Stronger and smarter.
Didn't get a second fucking
stands for in G2. Just...
Yeah, we're on the GG Brothers train here,
T1.
guys. Where's their second chance? Are you saying it's stage 2?
They don't have
Or
a two
is
in
it just
their
never
name.
coming?
already?
Unreal. Okay, listen. We've kept you guys here for a while, so we'll cap it off there. Ryan, Jess, thanks for joining us. Great to have you guys on the show. Thanks also.
Thank
for
you
your
very
input
much.
on EU.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you guys later.
See ya.
All right, you guys are fucking still stuck here. Real quickly, I'm gonna wrap up the show in just a second here. Reminder, of course, everybody, tomorrow, 11 a.m. PT. No, well, it's 12 p.m. PT actually, I guess, timing wise. We're gonna be back on the breakdown. Me and Scoots. A lot to talk about again this week. Sometimes we cross over into Valorant. Well, we might do that this week. Sometimes we end up, crossing into more specific gaming territory. Yeah, but I'll be in the studio again in lovely Arizona. Right there with Scott. We'll be breaking down all the latest and greatest news in the scene this week. Guys, thanks for coming on the show. We're going to leave everybody here with a little bit of a new segment here, a bit of a VRL recap done by our producer, Ian. So enjoy. On that note, we'll catch up with you next week. Hopefully, we've seen more EU games, much more to talk about. Of course, we'll have plenty of NA to discuss as we go into the last week of their VCT. So stick around for that. And we'll see you next Tuesday, 11 a.m. PT. Now enjoy your VRL recap.
Hi, my name is Ian St. Lawrence, and I'm the executive producer of Valoranting, and this is VRL Vlog. Starting off, we have VRL Spain with Team Heretics. And guess what? Team Heretics has been doing real bad. So you know who they picked up? They picked up Kellogg's. Kellogg's from G2 Esports, a storied and historical player who replaced Mixwell, then got replaced by Mixwell, then replaced Mixwell, and then got replaced by Mixwell, and now he's on Team Heretics, who are best known by doing really well in 2021 and First Strike, but now they're doing real bad. They have been losing and losing and losing. In fact, they just lost this past week, and they are now 1-8 in the standings. That's right, out of 9 games, they've won 1. And of all the games that they've had Kellogg's with them, they've won 0. But in the top of the standings, we have old favorites, Giants, and they've been doing pretty well. Next up, we have VRL Turkey. I'm a turkey, that's the joke. Anyway, VRL Turkey has some names that we know as well. Fireflux Esports and Footballists. But those teams are not at the top of the standings. Instead, at the top is a Turkish team that started in March 2021, and their name is Surreal Esports. Here's their great stage. I'm a turkey, that's the joke. Anyway, Surreal Esports is at the top of the standings, beating out everyone else in the Turkish scene. So good for them. Shout out to Yinsu. Moving on, we have VRL Northern Europe. This place has a lot of teams that we recognize. Excel, 10-Star, Tundra Esports, all great teams. However, the team at the top with a 5-0 record is Alliance. Shout out to MitchMan. You go, MitchMan. Your team's doing great. They've beaten everyone, and who knows, maybe they'll continue through the playoffs and everything else. Look at them. They're right at the top. And finally, we have this sad, sad tweet from Kellogg's. It's in the most difficult moments that you have to stay mentally strong. I won't lie to you, it's very hard. It is very hard, Kellogg's. You're on a losing team, and you used to be on G2 Esports, another losing team. But you know what's not difficult? Showing up to Valoranting on Tuesday at 11 a.m. PST.